Merry Christmas everybody, hope you're having a nice day. Just a quick warning before I start this video, then there will be some sensitive topics brought up in this video, so just trigger warning if you want to skim past that, or just be aware of it before watching the video, but enjoy. Happy holidays. Welcome once again to the What We've Been Watching thingy holidays editions, and I'll put some jingly jangly music. So my guest this month is my mate Ray. Hello Ray, welcome.
Hello.
Thanks for doing this.
That's okay.
So the drill as always is me and the guest Ray in this case will be talking about what we've been watching over the past few weeks for December, so both films and TV, and we're going to have a little bit of a chat back and forth about each other's choices and hopefully give you guys some picks to be watching or to catch up with. Encourage you guys to let us know what you've been watching in the comments below as always. But we're going to make a start on film.
The thing I watched this month was a film I've been trying to watch for a long time and finally got around to, which is Submarine by Richard.
Okay, Ayoade. The IT crowd guy.
Yeah, and
his debut.
Yeah, it was his debut. Has he done others?
I think he's done one of them. Maybe I'm not sure what it is, but
it's one of these sort of films that's been on the kind of I must get around to that sort of thing, and I was a bit disappointed, to be honest. I was all right. It was all right. It was okay, but it was like, it was nothing. I don't know, because I was trying to think what's in context. If you put it in context, it was very kind of quirky. It was a quirky British,
definitely
coming of age sort of movie. And I just thought, I've seen so many of these bloody things.
Yeah.
My Paradiso and My Life as a Dog and The Year My Voice Broke and things like that, where they're not so quirky. They were kind of, they were more just about coming of age.
Yeah.
And then at some point you kind of started getting Donnie Darko and I'm trying to think of some others, Juno and things.
But yeah, they feel more like modern.
They were more quirky.
A different take on the coming of age.
And this just felt like just another one of them. It didn't. I was expecting something different. I was expecting something more and something different and better, and I just didn't kind of get it really. What I would say is Sally Hawkins as his mother, as the boy's mother, and is it Noah? I want to say Hathaway. The Australian actor, fantastic, and also Lee Constantine was in it as well, and also brilliant.
Yeah, he's always good.
But the main two of the story, not very. I mean, it was all right. It was okay. Actually, I think you're going to hear that a lot.
Okay,
it was all right for me,
but not great.
A lot.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there was much of a plot though. It was just this boy kind of in love with this girl. And they sort of have a relationship.
Little bit dreamlike, isn't it? And I think he's inspired by like the French New Wave a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's references to that, and there's this big samurai poster, and I've heard him talk about Zazie dans le métro, whatever it's called, the Louis Malle film in interviews, which is why I was expecting a bit more, I think.
Yeah.
But actually, in the end, I just kind of went, oh, well, that was a nice film. It was nice. There was just nothing overly wonderful.
Well, I had similar feelings, I think, because I saw it when it first came out, so it's a while ago now. And
right.
So I had similar expectations that it was going to be really good. And I think because it's a first-time film, I would say generally it looked like from a director who sort of knew what he was doing. I would say.
Yeah, there was nothing wrong with it. It was all perfectly.
I think the way I would describe it as it was too try hard. Like it was just trying too hard to be like overly quirky or like overly sort of artsy type thing, and I think maybe it did lack a good story, like you're saying, a bit more of a heart. Like I felt a bit detached from it because I thought it was trying too hard to be like overly artsy or quirky and overly stylish, and almost I just felt a bit detached from it, like.
Yeah, that was actually that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't really like the two main characters very much. They weren't massively appealing. I don't know whether they were meant to be, but the boy who's really the main character, just seemed very self-absorbed. Really, sort of, he's a teenage boy. What teenage boy isn't somewhat self-absorbed? But I don't know. It just didn't.
But when it comes to pulling you into the story, you just didn't find him likeable enough, or to have like more to him than that, I guess.
And I just expected it to be more inventive and more original. I think. Yeah. And it kind of wasn't. It was a bit like, let's do quirky now.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't mad. It was perfectly enjoyable.
Yeah.
It was alright.
Sometimes with first time features, I think maybe you just try a bit too hard to like. It's almost like he wanted to reference the people who inspired him, which you can do a little bit, but you also have to have your own sort of groove as well, and maybe he didn't quite get that balance right.
But there's something about his persona, because obviously he's a relatively famous actor. So, I've seen him in stuff, and then he did like the Crystal Maze, and then he did various shows, which I've not always seen, but there's something about him as a kind of actor, as a personality, which is a bit sort of quirky in itself, but kind of original and different, and sort of. And I don't know, I think I just expected quirky but different quirky somehow, more original quirky.
The theme with my films, a lot of them this month, is that they're either Christmas films or related to Christmas. Not quite all of them.
Right.
So the first film I watched on stream this month, which I have to say was a really good film but bloody depressing, it does have Christmas in the title. If I give you a clue, I'll say it's got a Starman in it.
Oh, I'm guessing then it's got David Bowie in it.
It does.
Christmas film. Is it The Last Temptation of Christ?
No.
That was not really Christmassy.
No,
it's more of an Easter film. Hang on.
One more guess and then.
Well, hang on. Okay, David Bowie. Christmas, David Bowie. Oh, Labyrinth.
No.
No, okay.
Well, Christmas in the title. It's Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence.
Oh.
The war movie. The Prisoner of Camp War.
Right.
So not cheery at all.
No, well I saw that when it came out.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. But this was a first time watch, and it was a funny experience watching that on stream. But so in case people don't know, it is based on like true life experiences. You have the Tom Conti character, Conti, I should say. Yeah, So it's based on like that character's sort of experiences at war, and this friend who he befriends, the David Bowie character, who is caught by the Japanese, and it's about the torture that they're put through, particularly the Bowie character.
Yeah.
And just about their experiences, and a lot of it's an insight to some of the things that went on in these prisoner of war camps. And
yeah, I mean, that's Hiroshima, isn't it? He's trying to get to the sort of Japanese psyche, I think. It's Sakamoto character, who's the camp commandant, isn't he? And he is, he's kind of got all these dreams of being like a samurai and things, hasn't he? I mean,
there was one scene where I thought him and Bowie were going to engage in a samurai sword fight, and it didn't quite happen. But
well, I think
that would have been a very different.
Do you not? Yeah, I mean, I think slightly fancy David Bowie. Isn't that what sort of is going on?
I think that's under the surface, so I guess if you want to read that you could, but I don't think it's made clear.
No, it's not explicit.
But you could read it as that.
Yeah, I think that because he sees something in David Bowie, he sees defiance, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And whereas I think most of the prisoners that he's guarding are kind of, they just want to stay alive, and so they're kind of, you know, bowing and scraping, and Bowie has got a bit of fight left in him.
Yeah. And I think that's why Bowie is well cast in the film, because I think it taps into a lot of his kind of real life stuff. Like, he was a very defiant sort of character. He obviously a very larger than life character, and it definitely touches on like homophobia, that kind of thing, and that's something.
Well, there's that whole scene at the beginning where they
was
make the
very
Japanese guy kill himself because he's tried to rape one of the prisoners, hasn't he? Is that right? Have I got that?
Yeah, that's a very early scene. Yeah, that's really traumatising, that scene.
Yeah, do you remember it's quite not exactly graphic, but it's like it goes on a long time, doesn't it, when he's disemboweling himself. And he's doing it to himself. It's quite...
And it is, I think it is that sort of film. A lot of it is very unflinching, but it did take me off guard just how dark it was, but good role for Bowie. Conte's very good as well. I think there's a couple of scenes where it's a little bit hammy, and there's a couple of scenes where... I mean, I think it is a little bit performative, and that's good, because I think you want... Although there's not a lot of hope in the movie, you do get... I think there's a sense of, like, empowerment because of the way he does sort of fight back, and there is, like, obviously a certain style to it, but, like... Yeah, no, it's very grim, very full on. I didn't expect it to be quite as dark as it was, and...
Yeah, I mean...
Very psychological sort of torture.
Yeah.
Many times, but... Definitely glad I'd, like, ticked it off, because it's one that had been sort of on my radar for a while, so...
Yeah, I mean, can I tell you anecdotes? I met Nagisa Oshima one time.
Okay, yeah, this is good.
And I've actually only seen, I may have seen 3 films by him, but I've seen that, and I've seen Eino Corrida.
Yeah, that's the one you hated.
I hated it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so...
Is that the really erotic one?
Well...
Not that
I don't know if you could describe it as erotic. It's got a lot of sex in it. It's got a very graphic sex in it. But it is the most unerotic... Well, you know, until Eyes Wide Shut came along, you kind of watch this film kind of going, how much sex and nudity can you have and be not in the slightest bit around? You know, it's so boring. I mean, it's so boring because it's 2 people screwing for 2 hours. Pretty much non-stop. I mean... And I think they were doing it for real. I think it was kind of why...
That's what I was going to ask.
Why it was scandalous.
Because I think I might have seen it, but... Because the other one I've seen of him is Realm of the Senses, and that's...
Isn't that the same thing?
No.
What's that one then?
What, are you just thinking it's the same but with a different title?
No, I think that's just Eino Corida translate. Is it not?
Well...
Oh, maybe not.
Yeah, but it's a different film. It's not the same film.
Is it?
Yeah, Realm of the Senses it's called. It's from like the 70s.
Yeah, so is Eino Corida.
Well, what, is that what that means in like...
I believe so.
Oh, okay.
What? People screwing for 2 hours.
Well, I mean, there's scenes like that. I didn't think it was all the way... I mean, basically, it's an affair between like...
Like a general and a geisha, isn't it?
I think so. Is that the same film?
It's the same film.
For fuck's sake. I thought it was different because I remember this film. Bits of it are shot in bits of it are shot in black and white.
Oh no.
And there's quite a lot of blood in it because there's some violence. Quite an extreme film outside of the sex stuff.
You know, I'm actually wondering if it is the same film. Sex is they go and fly kites. And it's such a kind of, oh, thank God for that.
Yeah, a nice,
it's like,
a nice
and then 2 minutes later, they're back.
This is Keith from the future. Just to confirm then, Ali Corrida and Realm of the Senses are in fact the same movie. So sadly, a rare case where Ray is right, I am wrong. Back to the show, guys.
I met Nagisa Oshima And
Smooth.
I was actually at university, and it was 100 years of cinema, and they had like a thing at my university, and he appeared, and I had to give him something because I was working on. I'd left university, I graduated, but they had the thing at my university, and I was working on the 100 Years of Cinema kind of exhibition, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
And they said, go and give this to him. So I went up to him and I was like, oh, it's an honour to meet you, you're a famous film director, and I've just left university and I want to be a film director. And then I was talking to him for quite a long time, I think, But it was all like me kind of fawning and, being kind of, and then somebody tapped me on the shoulder and went, he doesn't speak English. Like, oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
How embarrassing. And he was kind of nodding slightly vaguely.
Yeah, like politely, yeah.
Anyway, there you go. So that was my meeting with Nagi Shoshima.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a job out of it.
No.
I didn't say what I thought of Eino Corrida.
No. Quite.
In that.
Well, it's not like he could have understood you anyway.
No, that's.
So you could have done it.
He would have understood Eino Corrida.
Well,
I thought he would have pronounced it very badly.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. You can find on the Arrow streaming service, which you can get through Amazon, if that's.
Oh well, with Submarine, I just had it on DVD, and most of mine I've got on DVD. Another film that I've been meaning to watch for a long time, and again I watched it on DVD, and it's Godard, and it's Un femme et une femme, or A Woman is a Woman.
Okay.
And yeah, this was, it's Godard, so you kind of know what you're going to get, right?
Pretty much.
It's breaking the fourth wall. It's Anna Karina. Anna Karina, is that her name?
Yeah.
Who was the kind of his wife, wasn't she? And she's very beautiful. Poster girl for the kind of French New Wave, really, wasn't she?
Yeah.
She plays a stripper loved by two men, one of whom is her boyfriend, and another one is his best friend, and she wants to have a baby. And that's kind of it. That's the plot.
Okay.
But being Godard, it's all dressed up in this kind of, they suddenly, there's a bit like where they have an argument and they say, if we're going to play out this scene, we should at least bow to the audience first. So they suddenly both turn to the camera and bow, and then they have the argument. Yeah. And it's full of that. It's French films in the 60s. They're just very flat.
Yeah.
It's like they just put a big floodlight on it. And it's a bit like this, actually. And everything's slightly flat and sort of... But the colours are really kind of vivid. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's no shadows anywhere. It's kind of weird. And there's lots of bits where it really looks like he's just walked down the street and he's got hidden cameras and and they interact with members of the public. And I'm sure it all means something, but I think actually in the end, I kind of just enjoyed how sort of odd it was, really.
Yeah.
You're just kind of enjoying the kind of, I think if you're going to watch a Godard film for enjoyment, I don't know, it's almost like you've got to enjoy the fact that it's bizarre, that it doesn't really kind of, and I think he was probably trying to make some political comment, because that seems to be what he's about, but I've no idea what it was, and I don't know how you get it from this film, because maybe, I don't know, but, it was just a kind of straightforward love story. Jean-Paul Belmondo is in it as well. He's not the boyfriend, he's the kind of the friend, so he has the smaller part where he comes in and he says, "Oh, Breathless is on telly, I want to watch it."
Oh, God.
And because he was the star of Breathless.
Yeah. Jesus.
And, and there's just bizarre stuff, like in the middle of a conversation, one of them is suddenly cycling around the apartment. And it all actually looks like they really just filmed it in someone's apartment.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say about it, really.
It's like this.
There's not a lot to say. Yeah, I should get a little bike and stuff. Yeah. But I don't know what to say about it. It was just fun. Because
I know you're very up and down on his films. It seems like some you like more than others. So it sounds like this is one of the ones you liked a bit.
Yeah,
more.
it's probably if you're in that kind of mood.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when I was at university, we watched loads of them, and you watch 3 or 4, and you start sort of going, "Oh God, not again." You know? It's like
Yeah.
more of the same. But when I haven't seen one for like 10 years, I suppose I probably have, but I can't remember any. And I remember quite liking Breathless. I don't know what to say about it really. I mean, have you seen it?
I haven't. No.
No. I mean, it's fun. You know, I think it's fun if you're up for that. You know, if you kind of think, you know, well, this is, I want a melodrama or something, you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But if you just kind of go, you know what, it's silly and it's probably taking itself very seriously, but you can kind of giggle at it.
Sure.
It does seem to be a comedy. I mean, it does seem to be intentionally playing for laughs at times. But in a way, what's funny is the surrealism of it.
Yeah.
And his serious films are no less surreal, so they're just as funny in a way. You know, it's like
Okay.
it's no more or less funny than his kind of non-comedies. Is it a comedy? I don't really know. Anyway, there you go. So I enjoyed it. I think, you know, it's about the right. It's like 90 minutes or something. You know, so it's not like 3 hours,
that's
and
a
I think
good
you'd
length.
struggle. You know, but
If
90
it was
minutes.
much
It's a
longer.
neat little watch. It's fun. And I quite enjoyed it.
Very good. Actually do too, just because my next couple are both like versions of A Christmas Carol, because
So you really have been going
it
for it.
is the season. So the first one I watched was The Scrooge from 1935.
Oh, is that Alistair Sim?
No, it's before him.
Oh, okay.
I'll be honest, I can't remember who it is. You'll have to look it up. But I know he's very posh because he's got Sir in his name. But
All right.
it's a very short one, I guess, because it's that old. But there's two versions. There's a black and white version, and there's a colour version. Now I watched the colour version because it's on Amazon, but the black and white is on YouTube. Black and white.
Same actors and everything.
Yeah, it's the same film. I don't know, because the black and white seems to be a bit longer for some reason, but it is very short. Like, the version I watched was like 58 minutes or an hour.
Okay.
And the version on the other version is like, I think there's maybe an extra 19 minutes, so I don't know what the difference is. Unless someone has just put it on there and forgotten to like press stop or something. And
Maybe another ghost.
yeah, maybe. So yeah, I think maybe the earliest version of that story on film actually. Yeah, I can't really think of
I'm wondering
one.
if I presume that's sound.
It is, yeah. I wondered if there might be a silent version.
I would be surprised if there isn't actually, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't think of one off the top of my head.
But yeah, off the top of my head, this is like the earliest, and yeah, I think it's okay. I think it's a solid Scrooge. Again, it's obviously all crammed in about an hour, but it's quite nicely done. It's sort of very gothic feeling, I think, because of the time period and how low budget it is, and something about the Christmas Carol story does suit being quite gothic and eerie. So I quite like that about it. I think the guy who plays Scrooge is fine. He's not one of the best, but he's certainly not one of the worst. Like we crack gags because like it was either last year or the year before on stream we watched the Kelsey Grammer version of Scrooge.
Oh yes,
terrible.
I had that on DVD. It's a musical, isn't it?
I think so, and there's lots of really good people in it, but it's terrible. And I do like Kelsey Grammer, but he's just not the right person. I mean, it's terrible in general. It's not just because of him. but,
Okay.
Like,
Does he? I don't think I watched it. I seem to remember buying it for the kids, and they didn't want to watch it. And,
it's from like 2003.
Yeah,
it's
this
got like
is,
lots of big comedy style actors in it.
oh, are there?
Yeah, like Jason Alexander out of Seinfeld. He's in
So a
it.
lot of Americans in it. I mean,
Yeah, that's what's funny because I was looking forward to it partly because I like Kelsey Grammer, and I thought when you see him in Frasier, I can see him making quite a good Scrooge, but for whatever reason, it just didn't
Yeah.
really come off. And
so who's the best Scrooge then? Ever?
I mean, it's close between a few. I mean, I love Bill Murray. I do love that version
Okay.
of. That's a great
See, I thought you were going to say
twist
Michael
on
Caine. Everyone says Michael Caine, don't they?
He's good, and I do love obviously George C. Scott. I think he's right up
Right.
there for Scrooge.
I don't think I've seen that version.
Yeah, I like that version quite a
Is
lot.
that from the 60s or 50s?
80s, I think.
Oh, really?
I think Alistair Sim. That's the one from the 50s, isn't it?
It could be 40s, I don't know.
Ah, okay. Well, anyway, I'll throw the question back at you. Do you have a favourite Scrooge?
Well, it's Michael Caine.
Michael Caine,
You know,
fair
I mean,
enough.
it's the best version of Christmas
Yeah.
Carol, isn't it? The Muppets Christmas
It is
Carol.
great. I mean, Ricky Gervais did say once that is the best story ever, and the only way to improve it is with Muppets. And I think, I think he was probably bang on with that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's an amazing. You know, they just got it so right. I mean, it is a true Christmas classic, isn't it? I mean,
It is, and it plays on TV every year, and pretty much everybody knows it, and it's amazing. So joyful.
And it, but in all seriousness, I mean, you know, but Michael Caine genuinely does.
He commits to it. That's the thing.
And he
like,
plays it.
Yeah.
He plays it straight. I mean, he doesn't play it like, you know, he's surrounded by Miss
Muppets,
Piggy and Kermit and Gonzo, and he's playing it absolutely straight. And it's really good. I mean, yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say about this version from 35 is because I think part of the key to like Scrooge, that character, is then you have to believe both sides of him. Like, you have to believe when he's obviously being the grumpy, you know, sticking the mug. But then you have to believe then he's suddenly got that life to him and that rejuvenation at the end. Like,
which actually,
brilliant.
if you think, actually not sure that Michael Caine pulls that bit off so well. Actually, the
Maybe, but I do quite.
I'm getting off the subject.
I think he's having fun with it. I think that's the point. So that sort of comes across. And that's what I was going to say about this one. I think he's very well cast for most of the movie where he's playing like the bad guy Scrooge. He's not so convincing at the end. Right. He sort of just does a little jigsaw thing and makes some noises, but he's not very...
That's probably of its time, I suspect.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, it's a decent one. It's not one of the best, it's not one of the worst. I'd probably put it in the middle somewhere. As I said, it's only about an hour. It's on Amazon, it's on YouTube, and so the other version I've watched, which is like an American version, and yeah, this one wasn't good. It's called An American Christmas from 1979, and it was like just made for TV, and so they've sort of translated it a bit because it's set in like the South during like the Depression era, so they're like doing that with the story, but it stars the Fonz himself, Henry Winkler, like, in the Scrooge. No, terrible.
No, I want to watch that.
Well, maybe for the novelty, but and I tell you what's funny about it, but also ironic because I'm watching it in 2023. They put old man makeup on him because, of course, in the 70s he was still Happy Days.
Well, he wasn't that young, was he? He was actually he was pushing.
I guess, but he was maybe a bit too young to play Scrooge.
Oh yeah, I mean obviously.
Whereas now he's old enough, but it's just funny that they put. And to be fair, the makeup effects are good in it. Like that's maybe one of the only things that is good because it's Rick Baker who did Nightmare on Elm Street and some really great.
Did he do Star Wars?
I think he's really good or was really good, and so the actual age in makeup I can't really fault. It is pretty good, but it's just surreal watching it in 2023.
Does he look like he does in? Is it Hank Zipfer, whatever it's called, that TV show he's in? Which is, I don't think it's that current actually, but my kids watch it.
I don't know. What's it called again?
I think it's called Hank Zipfer.
I don't know. I've seen him in other like stuff, like obviously Arrested Development, and he's in this HBO show at the moment called Barry. So I think his career has been sort of rejuvenated a bit.
Hasn't he? He's kind of based in England, isn't he? And he was. They were doing a.
I don't know.
I think he was producing like a West End version of Happy Days, wasn't he?
Oh well, I would say
I mean,
that.
this is on stage, a musical.
Right.
But this was quite a few years ago, and I don't know if it ever happened.
It's terrible. Like, I mean, it's made for TV.
Tell me Ron Howard is in it, or directed it, or
sadly
something.
not. No.
Oh.
No.
Did he direct it at least?
No. I don't know who directs it, but it's typical made for TV. Very cheesy. I mean, he's just really miscast. I mean, what I said about it was, it would almost be like Scott Bakula playing Scrooge, and I think the problem with that...
I don't know who Scott Bakula is.
The one out of Quantum Leap, Sam Beckett, but...
I still don't know who that is, I'm sorry, I don't know.
I thought you'd seen Quantum Leap.
No, I know it's got Dean Stockwell in it.
Yeah, so it's the other one. It's the other lead out.
Okay.
Making is Scott Bakula is one of these very likeable, charismatic, everyman type. That's the sort of character he normally plays. That's the character he plays in Quantum Leap. And I think it's similar with this. I think I just find it impossible to hate Henry Winkler. So I just can't see him as Scrooge.
I wanted to say, so the ghost comes and goes, hey!
Yeah. Well, that would have made the film more lively. But there are moments that are so over the top and silly you do laugh. Like, there are, because like his whole thing, and he was a visionary in this, because when he's doing the whole thing, because like he sells like furniture or something, and he's talking about like chairs, and
he's not like a slave owner or something then, is he?
No, not quite, but his big vision is like, this is the future, like these chairs and that, and he rubs up like his boss the wrong way, but it's one of these, again, he's meant to be like a cynical like capitalist who is leaving everybody behind. But it's just so funny. There's a melodramatic scene where like his furniture is being burnt because like it's when things are turning a bit grim for him, sort of thing. And so there's bits like that are quite so bad they're sort of funny. But yeah, so that's not surprisingly free on YouTube, but that's An American Christmas starring the Fonz himself.
It's on YouTube, that's not on Amazon.
No, it's
the other one's on
the other one's on YouTube as well, but but
the black and white version is on.
So you can knock yourself out. You can, but I thought I'd mention them together because that is pretty much like an American version of that. So
I decided to watch something that I have been meaning to watch by one of my absolute heroes for years and years and years. I have never seen this film before now, and it was Hobson's Choice.
Okay.
Which just wonderful. I mean,
David Lean.
I should have said that, shouldn't I? David Lean, Charles Lawton, and John Mills, and a very young Prunella Scales in it.
Oh, excellent.
She's not the main woman. Obviously, Prunella Scales played Sybil Fawlty Towers, but in this, she's the kind of young. I wouldn't exactly say sexy, but she's the young, attractive thing. But it's really about her elder sister, who's a kind of spinster who marries John Mills. And I mean, I think John Mills just steals this film from everybody. And it really struck me as an odd thing because it's from the 50s, but it really feels like it's about 20 years older than it kind of actually is. It's weirdly kind of old-fashioned, and obviously it's from an old play, so I guess. But, you know, the sensibilities of it are very... You know, you think we'd had sort of film noir and we'd had sort of these American films where these men were real men, you know, and they were kind of, you know, aggressive. You know, and suddenly you've got this very meek, mild, sort of slightly boring, sort of simpleton staking his claim. And it's in some ways it's so much more relevant. It's stood the test of time better, I would say, than a lot of these kind of film noir, which actually, you know, if you describe it, sounds much more modern and much more. I mean, not that I dislike film noir, but you know what I mean. There's something about this film you sort of think this shouldn't be good. This should just a dinosaur of a film, and it's so not. I mean, it's just charming from start to finish, and John Mills absolutely wonderful. Completely charming in it. Have you seen it?
No.
Oh,
Because
right.
I've seen quite a few Lean, but no, it's one I haven't seen.
Well, you're not a big fan, are you, of Lawrence of Arabia, at least?
I'm not, but I do like a lot of his other stuff. I do. I really like actually Blythe Spirit. I think
Blythe
that's
Spirit's
quite
brilliant,
underrated. But
yeah.
also Bridge on River Crier, I think, is a good sort of epic.
And Brief Encounter.
Yeah, I like Brief Encounter. So I probably like most of his films that I've seen.
You'd probably like this. I mean, this is a. Again, I saw this on DVD. Charming, love. So actually, having said right at the beginning, you're going to hear a lot of me saying, "Yeah, it was all right." Haven't really got to that yet.
No, you're on the good run.
I'm on the run.
Yeah.
And I mean, Lean is just a brilliant film. And the very famous bit is when Charles Lawton gets drunk and
Yeah.
has to walk home, and he's following the moon in the puddles. Do you remember that? Do you know about that?
I'm not sure now.
It's a very famous
Okay.
sequence, and it's really funny. I mean, it is really funny, and then, and there's stuff like John Mills on his wedding night. He marries this woman sort of against his will, really. She just makes him marry her because she's kind of a spinster.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she's like 30 or something, and she's not married. And they're like, well, you're on the shelf, and she decides she's going to get married, and this kind of guy who works in her father's shoe shop, and he's a bit of a simpleton, and he's got the kind of spiky up hair, and his he's got wedding day, and they've got the family round, and they have a meal, and she's very practical, and she says, I'm going to bed, you wash up, and then you can come and join me. And there's this long sequence of John Mills kind of, tidying up and sort of knowing that and he keeps looking, and you see the bed, and he's trying to get undressed, and he's all embarrassed, and it's ridiculous, but it's just so charming. I mean, it's just lovely. I mean, so yeah, definitely recommend.
Recommend it.
Yeah. Without reservations, really. I mean, that would probably be my absolute number one film that I've seen.
That you've seen this month so far. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think I might catch up with that and let you know what I think. My next pick is a bit of a weird one. It's another one that falls a little bit into like the sort of Merry Christmas Mr. Lawrence one, where technically it is a Christmas film. It's not a very pleasant film. I'm not sure in a good way, but it's called Night Train Murders from the mid-70s.
Okay, I don't know this one.
Well, it's an Italian film, although the version I watched again on Amazon is dubbed. But I think a lot of Italian films from that time were dubbed, so that could have just been...
The thing about Italian films, even when they're speaking Italian, it's dubbed. Well, no, but
Well, the first thing I'll mention about it, and one of the best things about it, is that it does have a Morricone score.
Oh, right.
Area Morricone does the music, so that's
nice. That's always a bonus.
It is a bonus. Although it's weird, like the music is good, but like there's a scene near the end which is meant to be quite a tense chase type scene, and it's sort of more like it's like a psychedelic style synth type music that they're using, so that's a bit weird. But yeah, obviously the music is going to be good with him doing it, but like, so it's like another entry in like the rape revenge type thing. So I saw it described as like a loose remake of something like The Virgin Spring or like Last House on the Left, the Wes Craven film.
Isn't Last House on the Left meant to be a remake?
Well, there's that rumour. I mean, it's different enough than it's its own film.
Right.
And of course Craven has said he was partly inspired by the violence that came out of Vietnam. For that film, so
I've never seen Last House on the Left.
Okay, it's interesting. I mean, it's not one of his best films, but it's interesting, and I mean that is an interesting subgenre of movie when it comes to horror, and there's always this question of how far is too much and what moral purpose do they serve, and I think that's the area that we're getting into with this, because again, it's different enough, the story, from those other two to say that it's its own film. But I mean, basically, like two sisters are going to visit family for Christmas. So they go on like this train, and you get these couple, like early on in the film, you've got like these nasty guys who basically mug someone dressed as Santa Claus. So there you go.
It makes it a Christmas
That's
film.
great. Yeah, I'm counting it technically as a Christmas movie. And they're travelling for Christmas, but you get these nasty characters on the train, and things start to escalate. And there's sort of a twist really, because you've got this blonde-haired woman who you see around the train, and she's being quite sort of like, a little bit like snobby, but there's a twist where like she hooks up with one of the guys, but she actually becomes more like the ringleader, like she's directing traffic. But you can obviously see where it's going, and they kind of trap these two innocent girls in the carriage, and things slowly build on this train over the night. Parents don't know what's going on. And I mean, to follow the similar plot to that, and also Last House on the Left, the parents later on take these characters in without knowing exactly who they are. And at that point, they don't know what's happened to their daughters.
Right.
And they slowly start hearing reports on the radio, and things start clicking into place. And that's where the revenge part slowly comes in. But, so it's not a very good film. Like, I do think partly it is too exploitative, and I think there is always this how far is too much. And I think this does linger on things in an overly like salacious sort of way, and like the rape to one of the girls is particularly unpleasant. I mean, there is something about it because they're in this carriage for a long time and it's really dark, and they basically got them trapped in there. So there is something quite claustrophobic about that. So there is something where there's a little bit of tension to that. But apart from the fact that it's unpleasant, and I think there are times where they didn't need to go as far as they went, because I don't think it really served much of a purpose. I think the other thing about it, I think it's trying to be provocative at times for the sake of it rather than... But the other thing about it is it's just not very well done. You know, the acting isn't very good. The acting's pretty wooden. I think there's some bad reaction shots. I think there's a lot of cutting around because, like, when they're on the train and things are, like, building, you do cut back to the parents having, like, a dinner pie with, like, some friends. And there's a lot of cutting about, and sometimes that can be effective, but in this case, I think it was just dragging the pacing down, like it was making it too sort of strung out and too sort of choppy. I think when it got to a certain point, it should have focused more on what was happening in the train. Have a bit of like a twist ending, which I didn't see coming. And I think it's why they did introduce this other character to the trio. I would say the ending of the film might be the highlight of the film, but overall... Nah, I wasn't really into this one. I think as I said, I think it's very unpleasant, especially if you're watching as a female. And I don't think they really justified doing it in the film, like going that far. And it's just very tacky and cheaply made, so
I wasn't
a fan.
I was talking to a friend the other night actually about, you know, a lot of 70s movies, particularly like Peckinpah and... I mean, so Hollywood, we're talking about Hollywood movies particularly, but I was sort of saying, you know, that films like Once Upon a Time in America obviously had a very nasty rape scene in... and it was hard because it's a film I really love, you know, and... But that scene, you kind of go, did it need to be there?
Yeah.
And we were sort of talking about things like, you know, Straw Dogs and stuff, and like Peckinpah kind of, you know, and actually just how many Hollywood, you know, in the 70s had this golden period, but like how many of those films just had awful kind of, rape scenes or just women.
Yeah.
And I think there was a kind of an idea of, we're gritty, we're showing you how life really is. But then when you've got directors like Peckinpah doing Straw Dogs, they're not really, are they? I mean,
stuff like that should be in films because unfortunately it happens in the real world. But then if that's the only reason you're doing it, after a while I think it just becomes that. It's a bit...
Yeah, I mean...
And definitely in this case I thought they were a bit overly salacious. And it felt more like they were being provocative than it was actually justified.
I mean, obviously I've not seen it, and I've not seen Last House on the Left, but I have seen The Virgin Spring, which I think is an amazing film. I mean, I do think it's an incredible film.
But
yeah, I mean, the rape scene in that is very... it's quite horrible, but it's not... There's something kind of... I would show it to a woman. I wouldn't have any trouble watching that with a woman. Whereas I wouldn't... I don't know, I mean, it doesn't sound like I would watch this film that you're describing with a woman.
Yeah. Well, it was very I mean, we were watching it on stream, and it's just one I stumbled into because I saw there was a slight Christmas link. And I think because of the title, I just thought it might be one of those, like, silly, fun slasher type movies. So I wasn't really prepared for it being as graphic as it was.
Right.
And yeah, it was uncomfortable because obviously there were some people on stream watching the film as well. And
right.
Yeah, I think we all felt similar. Last House on the Left, too bad. Like, it's not overly done. And I think, again, at least Craven had some of an idea behind it because, as I said, he was inspired by Vietnam and the violence. So at least he had a point behind it. A bit like I'm sure Bergman did with his film. Whereas with this, it didn't really feel like there was much of a point. Yeah, but yeah, it's obviously an interesting subject because of the way things were in America in the 70s, and because you could suddenly get away with a lot more in movies, then
yeah, I mean,
it is noticeable,
it was,
isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, sort of post Bonnie and Clyde.
So,
my attempt at a Christmas movie.
Okay.
And again, it was another film I've been wanting to watch for a long time. But it's The Gospel According to St Matthew. So this is Pasolini doing God, really. 60s, I think.
Okay.
Do you know it?
No, I've not even heard of it.
Oh, right.
I mean, obviously I know Pasolini, but no, I've not heard of this one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's more famous for films like Sarlo and... Which, I don't know if you've ever seen Sarlo.
Bits of it.
Yeah, well, I saw the whole film and I was nearly sick. And
well, I can imagine.
But, he's done things like Oedipus Rex and the Decameron and Arabian Nights and Canterbury Tales and all that.
All sorts, yeah.
But this, it's kind of weirdly out of character because he was a atheist, communist, homosexual...
Right, okay.
Not sort of anti-conformist, whatever. And he made a very straightforward book of, the Gospel According to St Matthew. I mean, he just told the story straightforward. Apparently he thought it was a beautiful, beautiful story, beautiful piece of literature. He was an atheist, he didn't think it was real, but he thought it was a beautiful story, and apparently, this is what I've heard. And he's not kind of trying to make any kind of judgment on it or any kind of statement, I think. But it's the weirdest sort of... It's so straightforward. I mean, it's so absolutely... it's almost like God's greatest hits, kind of every single story. It's like, oh, there's the loaves and the fishes, and there's John the... Salome and John the Baptist, and there's... I don't know, healing the lepers. It's like everything. There wasn't anything where I went, I don't know this bit. And I thought, is it just that the entirety of the Gospel according to St Matthew is, Matthew's Gospel, is it just really, really well known, all of it? Is there nothing?
Not to me. I'm the wrong person to.
Well, you know about the loaves.
Well, obviously, yeah. I know the cliff notes, but.
Well, no, but I think that's kind of that's what. But it wasn't like there was no kind of. It just kind of went from event to event to event to event to event, in the most kind of sort of what's the word? Sort of detached kind of way. You know, you just saw it. There was no attempt to sort of analyze what was going on or what people were thinking or what they were
right.
You know, it was like kind of you could have been reading it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was.
So played very straight by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I mean, the in terms of actually getting a real kick at, you know, at any point was when the leper appeared, and I actually think, oh my god, have they got a real leper? Because it was shocking, and it was like, oh my god, this was not. It didn't look like makeup. I mean, this looked like a really badly deformed man. I mean, you know.
Brother.
Yeah, that was a real kind of oh god moment, you know. But I mean, Salome was the most interesting bit really, because she was a child. I mean, she was like about 12 years old. The girl who played Salome. Get it? You just got her doing this dance that looked quite boring. I mean, it wasn't. I said, oh, you know, you've pleased me with your dance. What would you like? And I want the head of John the Baptist. That's kind of the end. That's it. That's the scene. You know, there's no. Why do you want the head? You know, and the whole film's a bit like that. You know, so there's a shot of Jesus walking along the beach, and there's some fishermen, and he suddenly goes, Peter, Jail, I don't know who they were, but Peter is one of them, isn't he? Come with me. And the next scene, there's like the three of them walking along to another beach, and then, you know, Philip, Bartholomew, come with me. There's 5 of them, and then it cuts, and there's 12 apostles, and then. But then, you know, like why?
I'm a bit confused whether you actually liked this film.
No, I didn't. I was bored
because
stupid.
Of that, yeah.
I was bored stupid.
So does it sound like he just played it too safe? Like,
well, I don't know about played it safe. I think he, you know, I think it's probably. No, I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's kind of. I don't know, Italian 60s movie sensibilities or something, you know.
Right.
But it was just boring. I was just bored. Okay. I was bored rigid.
Can enjoy like many different kinds of films and different perspectives, but do you think your perspective as being like anti-religion, not believing, do you think that impacted on that?
I mean, I'm an atheist. I don't think, you know.
You don't believe in it.
I don't think I believe. I don't think it had an impact.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, I don't believe in ghosts, but I love a good ghost story.
Well, yeah, true, but
you know, I think that
I just wondered if maybe to you he was paying too much lip service to, and maybe because you don't.
No, I think the film was just devoid of any kind of emotional sort of investigation. I suppose it was. There was no attempt to get into the minds of any of the characters. It was just like I say, you could. Probably when you. I've never read the Bible, but presumably when you read. I've read bits of the Bible, you know, and I do remember actually.
It's similar with me.
Being a child at Sunday school, that sort of thing, and obviously they give you the kind of kids' Bible. It's the New Testament, and the first book of that is Matthew. I think. So I think that, and I think I did start to read it. So you are just kind of reading events, and probably because of the way. I imagine that they don't go into it, but you think about like The Last Temptation of Christ or something. Those kind of, it's all about the kind of psychological journey that all these characters are on, and this is just not that. But it's such a sort of revered classic. It's a real. People really rate this film, and I didn't get it. But the thing about it, sometimes you got to be in the mood for these sort of films. Sometimes Die Hard, you can You can stick it on. It probably doesn't really matter what kind of mood you're in. You're going to enjoy it somehow. Something like this, you kind of...
You have to be in the
And maybe it's what I was saying about Godard, you know, it's like, if I'm in the mood for it, I'll enjoy it. Or if I'm not, I'll find it annoying and sort of self-indulgent. But this wasn't self-indulgent. It was almost like just devoid of... It was like, you know, it was like, okay, we've got this book with all these events in it. How do we show these events? Well, you know, look, he walks on water at one point. Okay, there he is walking on water. And oh, he's walking on water. Next scene. And you think, well, is that it? You know, it's kind of it. And it was a bit like kind of, I want more. I want some... How do they feel about the fact that he's walking on water? No, and that was my... So no, I didn't like it at all.
No. To me, it does sound pretty tedious the way you're describing. Just remember, kids, then God may not exist, but Santa Claus definitely does. And that's a nice link to my next movie, because I've jungled the order a bit, and so I think I wanted to go with a more upbeat film next, and this was another first time watch. So I watched Santa Claus the movie from the mid-80s. So this is the one with Dudley Moore in.
But I've not seen this.
You've not seen it, and you've got David Huddleston as Santa Claus, and you've also got an early appearance from John Lithgow, who's brilliant as he always is. But like, so the first part of the movie, it's saying like the North Pole, and it's setting up like how Santa became Santa in a way, and like you've got his wife who he's already married to, and her becoming Mrs. Claus, and then moving into like setting up like the toy factory or whatever you want to call it.
So is he just a normal guy?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, and it does sort of show you like a little bit of a backstory about how he becomes like Santa, and that's like the first half of the movie, and then you've got like one of the little helpers who's played by Dudley Moore, and the second half of the movie is then he feels unappreciated by Santa Claus, so he runs away and he goes to live in New York, of course. So you get fish out of water stuff with him in New York.
He's elf.
Yeah, well, the direction the movie goes in is then you've got like John Lithgow, who's like this really cynical like capitalist like billionaire, and he like owns his own like toy firm or toy shop store, whatever you want to call it. And that's the direction it goes in. Then he like comes across this elf and starts using him for like commercial reasons, and obviously the Dudley Moore character has no idea that he's being exploited. So you've got Lithgow as this really like cynical, nasty capitalism. And he's really funny, like he makes it really funny, like he's got so much charisma and just so well cast in that kind of role. But that's the second half of the movie set in New York, and eventually, obviously, because like the John Lithgow character, he's got like I think it's like a granddaughter who kind of has a friendship with a local boy who's like living on the street. So it goes into that sort of thing, and like they're kind of characters who you're sort of rooting for, and they slowly realise then he's not being very nice, he's exploiting things, and that becomes like the plot of the second half of the movie. So it was a first time watch. I mean, my friend Rachel, who I obviously co-host with on the channel, she saw it growing up, so it's one that she has fond memories of, and so I was happy to take a look at it, and I enjoyed it. I think it has a certain charm to it, which I think a lot of family movies had in like the 80s, 90s, and a bit before that, but something which has been lost from like Christmas and family movies nowadays.
Right.
And I think the reason it works well, it's a little bit of a slow start, it takes a bit of getting into, but it's got a certain like 80s charm where the effects when you watch them today aren't so great, but there's a charm to that, you know. But like, I think it does feel like a bit of a throwback movie in that sense, where it feels like it's got a good heart and it's wholesome but not in an overly cheesy way, where it can be a little bit sentimental. Like, it's not afraid to do that without having to wisecrack every 5 minutes and kind of like, oh, we're all in on the joke, or this is like...
Which is a bit tedious, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think a lot of modern movies overdo that and kind of lose them. You do have to have a little bit of a charm, and also just being a little bit sentimental and cheesy. In a family Christmas movie, there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with sentiment anyway. People are scared of sentiment.
Yeah. And the other reason it works is because obviously it's very funny. You've got very good actors in that. And that's the other side, is then, you know, to have this sort of like message where like this evil like billionaire is like the opposite of the spirit of Christmas, where he's just exploiting it. And I guess this is something which came in more in the 80s, because obviously the Bill Murray Scrooge is very much about that as well. And that's where I think it gave... I mean, not that this is like the same story as A Christmas Carol, but it's got similar themes in a way. It gave that story a new leash of life.
It doesn't sound like it should be called Santa Claus the movie. It sounds like it should be called, you know... It should be called Elf. I mean, you know...
I mean, as I said, like, he features more in the first half, but then he is in the second half, because eventually they come together and he apologises to like the Dudley Moore character, so he is in it quite a lot. It's David Huddleston who plays.
I don't know who that
is. He's one of those actors, because he's in The Big Lebowski. He's good. Like, I wasn't sure because at first I thought they were going to turn him into a bit more of a villain, like his character, but I think it's just that at the start he's got a bit more of a cynical outview on life, but then he grows into like more of a Santa Claus type.
Right.
And his wife, it's really weird. I don't know the name of the actress, but I'm pretty sure it's the same actress out of the sitcom Keeping Up Appearances. I don't know if you've...
Routledge.
Not that one, the other like main one. The one who plays the wife of like the... You know, like her brother, like the one who's always in front of the TV. I'm not sure what the actress name is, but she plays it. The character's like Oslo, and she plays his wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
but it's her. Weirdly, it's her, even though this is like an American movie. And
well, Dudley Moore's British.
Yeah. Well, that's true, but I think you think of him as breaking through more in movies.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Dudley Moore's obviously great, and sadly no longer with us, but he's great. But that's the thing. I think they get a good balance of making it a good family movie with a good heart and a good story. But you get, as I said, this sort of satirical sort of switch to it.
Right.
But it's also very funny. Like, it's not afraid to be quite edgy in bits, but they don't overdo it with that stuff.
Right.
So, yeah, nicely done.
Okay.
I quite enjoyed that one.
Is it one for the kids? I'm always looking for movies that watch kids.
I mean, of a certain age, but yeah, I would say if you're like 8 or 9 and up, you could probably watch it.
Well, they're all up from that.
Okay. Yeah.
London to Brighton.
Oh yeah, I've seen this.
Yes,
a couple of times.
Okay, so this is kind of one of those. I really liked it. Apart from the end, too neat.
Yeah. Okay.
It was too neat and too sort of. But it was a really interesting premise, which is and quite unpleasant. I mean, quite an unpleasant film, but but quite an unpleasant premise, but not done in the right way. So,
very tense, isn't it?
Say what it's about.
Yeah, say what it's about.
So it's basically a prostitute is told to go and find a young girl about 12 years old to have sex with an older man who is a pedophile, who's like a gangster.
Yeah.
And she finds the girl, and we don't really know what happened, but she can't go through with it. And she goes on the run. And this means that the gangster and the pimp, who's the person who tried to get her to get the young girl, are after them. And it's the prostitute and the young girl on the run from London to Brighton, whilst being followed by all these people. And that's really the plot. I mean, that's kind of it. But it is quite tense.
Yeah, well acted as well.
Well
I
acted,
thought.
moving. I thought, and the young girl was really good, and she was very young, I think.
Yeah, I remember it.
She's probably a bit older than 12, but you know,
in that range.
It didn't really flinch away from how unpleasant this was. I mean, that was the thing I found kind of interesting. It was very upfront about that this probably does happen.
Yeah,
You
sadly,
know, this sort of thing probably does really happen.
Yeah.
And you know, kids on the street are worth money. I mean, it's awful to some people, and they see them as nothing more than that, really.
Yeah.
They're not pantomime villains, you know. They're played as human beings, you know, who justify what they do to themselves and to each other, and
I think that is very true to life.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately.
So yeah, I mean, I really, really like this film, but then the ending was very neat and very pat, and I thought that's kind of a shame. It promised more.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my only real. But I would definitely say if you want to watch something a bit grim.
And I think there's certain moments as well, like you do get inside like the child's head, and I think, you know, like the scenes travelling to like Brighton and stuff, I think there is a visual style as well where you can get inside her head, and there's moments of excitement even in this sort of grim life.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, and it's not by any means, it's not gratuitous either. I mean, that was the other thing I kind of appreciated about it. I suppose they probably had to, you know, and I'm very glad of this, they probably had to play it slightly, you know, they probably couldn't get gratuitous. But it didn't strike me as the kind of film that wanted to. You know, it was the sort of film that was like, it was as graphic as it needed to be. So yeah, I mean, there's not a lot more I can say about it really. I mean,
no.
You know, I think if you want to watch a kind of very tense film, I recommend it really.
Yeah.
For my money, the ending was too pat.
Yeah. Okay. Is it? I don't know. I mean, again, we won't say it, but like, is it then you felt they were maybe a bit afraid to go for like the super dark ending, so they just didn't, and that was.
No, I don't think that was it really. I don't think it was that. I think it was more just, it was the kind of, it was like, oh, you know, this will be interesting, but it wasn't interesting. It was like, yeah, I don't buy it. It just seemed fake. It was like, you know, where they kind of, you know, I don't know, I mean, particularly Hollywood films, it would seem in the 90s, they did it all the time, where you had a particular story, it went in a particular direction, and effectively the story ended, and then they would tack on a happy ending.
Okay.
It sort of felt a little bit like that, you know, it was like...
Okay.
But it wasn't necessarily a happy ending, and it wasn't really that...
No, I mean, that's what I was going to say.
I mean, but it was more the kind of...
Because it certainly doesn't undo the message of the film, and I think that's part of the appeal of the film as well, is that it is shining a light on a very sad part of, like...
And I looked up this director, and he's done a few other things, nothing... He did Filth, which was that Irving Welsh...
I didn't know he did that. I didn't realise. Which I quite enjoyed. I
haven't seen it, but...
Yeah, I also saw his second film, Cherry Tree Lane, and that's more of like a home invasion type horror movie, and that's quite well done as well. I quite liked that as well.
Okay. A movie about, I think it was a true story. I can't remember if it was like a docudrama or if it was a drama, but it was about a kind of two goths, and one of them was a big Harry Potter fan. Like a boy and a girl, they were like teenagers, and this is a true story, and they because they were goths, they were, you know, sort of not part of the gang.
Yeah.
But because they liked Harry Potter, some of the people were like, oh, that's quite interesting, tell us about Harry Potter. So they were kind of, if I remember rightly, they were lured to a park and then basically murdered.
This is...
The girl was...
I remember this story in the news, yeah.
Yeah,
terrible.
and he made a film about it. And
right.
And it was just because these people didn't like goths.
Yeah.
They didn't like goths who liked Harry Potter or something. I don't know what it was, but that was quite a... I mean, I don't really remember the film so much as I remember... I think I do remember the incident, yeah.
I do remember it in the news, yeah.
But there is also a film, and I have definitely seen the film.
Okay.
But it was like, one of these... Oh, I remember seeing that, yeah. It was like when I figured out who type of film that he makes, which is no bad thing, I suppose, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sort of slightly violent and slightly gritty and...
Without being,
what's his face, the guy who married Madonna, Guy Ritchie.
Oh, yeah.
Who I think, or Nick Love.
Which
we won't even mention.
Yeah. Gremlins movie, so I won't say much because people sort of know about them and you can check out the reviews which will be going up soon. But yeah, Gremlins is a classic, of course, a Christmas classic, a great sort of family movie, but also a great B-movie horror type movie, great creature design. And I always love a horror with rules, and that's what Gremlins has. And it sets out those rules very early on, and then it plays with those rules throughout. And I love when horror movies do that. Phoebe Cates is just adorable. I think her and Elizabeth Shue are kind of the two really cute girl next door it girls for that sort of era in a town which is very similar to It's a Wonderful Life, and it kind of references that. But yeah, what people forget about it is how dark it is. When it's dark, it's really dark because the Phoebe Cates character has a very dour look on life, and she does this famous obviously speech about why she's not so into Christmas, and it obviously...
Oh, because her dad
died
on
and he
Christmas
was dressed as Santa.
He got stuck in the chimney, is that right?
And and it's a great scene, but it's a really dark scene. You don't see it coming. It feels a little bit like it's from a different movie, but she also has that really dark line earlier in the film because she's talking about how people, the holidays are known for people committing suicides, and she has this line which is basically she says something like, when some people are opening their presents, others are opening their wrists. It's so dark. I always remember the big speech in the middle of the film, but yeah, I forgot about that line, so that line really hit me But no, it's a wonderful film, and I like that it dares to be as dark as it is, considering it is more of a family-friendly movie at times. You've got some good black humour in there. A lot of familiar faces, Judge Reinhold's in there.
Yeah, it's Joe Dante, isn't it? He came from the kind of Roger Corman...
Yeah, sort of school, and of course Dick Miller was in all his movies, and he's in Gremlins, and
Small part, isn't he?
Yeah, he's actually a bigger part in the sequel, but he...
Doesn't he die in the first one?
No, he doesn't die.
Oh, okay.
He's in peril at one point, but no, he doesn't die.
Okay.
But he's always great. I mean, in the first one, he's a bit of a curmudgeonly, old guy who's really cynical about foreigners, and I think he would probably be a Trump supporter if he was around. That's definitely a thing, but it's a great film. It's a wonderful film. Great music as well. Famous scene where they're getting into Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. They're watching it at the cinema, the Gremlins. And it's just this funny joke because it's the one thing that they can be merry about. They're causing chaos throughout the whole movie, killing people, or at least trying to kill them. And they all get engrossed by Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
I don't remember that.
It's a great scene. It's really funny. It's okay, this is
you
a
sure
thing.
It's not the second one?
No, it's the first one. It's progressive when it comes to the female characters, because I like the Phoebe Cates character is the slightly more cynical one out of her and the main guy. And that she's actually pretty tough, and because she works at a bar, and like the Judge Reinhold character is like this sleazy sort of yuppie type character who's trying to impress her, and she knows how to take care of him type thing. And also the mother, because there's a scene where the mother has to defend herself, and she goes all like almost Norman Bates with a knife. So the mother knows how to take care of herself. So I quite enjoy that about it. Than the female characters for an 80s like type film are pretty tough. You know,
Right.
I like that about it.
What I was going to say was I think when I saw it, if I remember rightly, I saw it as a Dick Miller triple bill.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, and I'm trying to remember. 'Cause one of the films was Bucket of Blood, which is the Roger Corman, which is just brilliant. I mean, it's just amazing.
That's a fun movie.
And then there was Gremlins, and I can't remember what the other one was. I can't remember. It might have been Gremlins too. I just don't remember.
Could have been.
But my feeling is, I don't think Gremlins 2 had been made when I saw, because I think it was not a, it was a, this was back in the days when we had rep cinemas in London, in Scala, which I don't know if still, I presume they still rep cinemas somewhere, but I think it was a Scala, and I think it was a Dick Miller triple bill, but I can't remember.
That does sound great, yeah.
Yeah, I just can't remember what the third film was.
It wasn't Chopping Mall, was it? Because I'm pretty sure he's in Chopping Mall.
Don't think it was.
Not that one.
I seem to remember he was the lead in the other two. So Bucket of Blood is the lead, and then he was the lead in the other one.
Gremlins 2 is a solid sequel. Like it's nowhere near as good as the first one, but
I'm fairly sure I haven't seen it.
It's a fun idea. I mean, it's set at like a studio, so it's now in New York, so you've got that sort of contrast between the small town setting of the first one, and it's fun. It's got a good idea, about like sort of TV and studios and kind of the more cynical side of entertainment. Because you've got one of the... I'm not sure what the actor's name is, but he was in like The Munsters. And he's in it as like an aging kind of horror type thing, and his whole thing is partly then the guy who owns like the studio, like the CEO guy. He doesn't do black and white. He only likes colour, that kind of thing, and it's that kind of they're sending up that sort of like culture and character, and at times they go a bit over the top because there's like a random cameo by Hulk Hogan, and it's just in the cinema, and weirdly he's got his title belt on and he's in his wrestling gear even though it's a trip to the cinema, so I guess that's how into his character he is. But he just tells the Gremlins to shut up, and it's one of those, he's breaking the fourth wall because it's like, okay, we can get on with the movie now, and there's just lots of like fourth wall type gags like that. But it is a solid sequel. Again, you've got lots of familiar faces. John Glover is fantastic as the CEO. I mean, when you see his face, you'll know him. But I mean, I'm watching him at the moment in Smallville, which is the teenage kind of Superman show. But he plays Lex Luthor's father in that. He's one of the best things, but he's great. I think he brings just enough childlike enthusiasm where there's something very naive about him. So he's not like a complete asshole like the John Lithgow character in the other movie. Like, he kind of doesn't know what he's doing in a way. He's more that sort of character. Look for our reviews of the two Gremlins movies, and back to you.
The cinema, and I saw Wonka.
Okay.
You look disgusted.
I'm not interested. I'll say that straight away.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
I can leave it.
I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Go on.
It's. I mean, it's okay. I will say, Hugh Grant steals the film.
Oh, I didn't know he was in it.
Yeah, Hugh Grant is in it, playing Hugh Grant, and manages to steal the film, steal the show. And I won't say any more than that because it's.
Okay.
I think it's like if you go in, I don't know what the reviews have been like, but
I think they've mostly been positive from the ones I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised, really. I didn't think I would like it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's not. It was more just I thought, oh, it's going to be completely by the numbers, which it was. I mean, it was completely by the numbers, but it was a musical, which is always a positive in my book.
Okay.
Um,
And were the songs good?
None of them were very memorable.
Okay, yeah, that seems to be.
But that's
par of the
fine. They
course
were enjoyable
nowadays,
enough.
but not bad.
I had a bit of a tear in my eye at the end.
No, did
Sally
you?
Hawkins in it again.
Oh, is she?
Yeah,
Okay.
you know.
So good cast at least.
Well, criminally underused, I have to say.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like in Submarine, you know, she's always good. But the boss from Peep Show, you know, the one who plays,
Oh yeah, Johnson.
yeah, I think it's Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
He's great. I love
the
that.
woman from Ghosts.
Okay, I haven't seen Ghost. But
Okay.
The main
The
one.
woman who's alive, who's not a ghost.
Yeah, I think I know. who you
I think
mean.
she, you know, and Olivia Colman, a lot of fun. You know, I think just take your cynical hat off, go and enjoy it. I mean, I could have done with it being about half an hour longer.
Right.
You know, which is really rare, isn't it? How often do you think, oh, I just want a bit more of this? You know?
Yeah.
Often you kind of go, oh, come on, it's like you've run out of steam now. But no, I mean, Timothy Chalamet. I was talking to some friends actually saying, you know, because I don't know if you know, it's a prequel to the Gene Wilder movie.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh.
I assumed if anything it was more to do with the Johnny Depp one.
Well, because there was again, this is funny moment on stream because people were talking about it, and I obviously said, yeah, I'm not really interested in that. I don't like Timothy Chalamet, and you know, I loved this like the Wilder version. I think the Burton version is perfectly solid, and that's all I need. But then I said to them, "Is it a prequel?" And they said, "Yeah." And oh, for fuck's sake, another one. And that was my reaction. I mean, obviously some prequels are good. I'm not saying all prequels are.
I mean, yeah, it was a kind of, you know, I suppose
Carry
it was an origin story. You know, where did he come from? Sort of. I mean.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we really need that.
No, I mean you didn't need it, but you know, there's nothing wrong with it. I think. But yeah, I mean, it was, and I was with some friends who the Gene Wilder one. And they liked it. They said
Okay.
it, you know, but I think I was sort of saying, you know, it wasn't like with Mary Poppins where Emily Blunt kind of had to fill Julie Andrews' kind of shoes. In some ways, it was less of a job, I think, to kind of live up to Gene Wilder. I couldn't have imagined anyone could have done it. And then Emily Blunt did it and actually pulled it off, I thought.
Yeah, it was surprisingly good, that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Hugh Grant is just brilliantly conceived, really. And I don't want to say, you know, like what part he's playing, because when it happens, you're like, oh no, they've cast Hugh Grant as, oh my god, that's brilliant.
Oh, okay.
And they've cast Hugh Grant, who plays it as Hugh Grant. You know, he plays 4 Weddings and a Funeral kind of Hugh Grant, you know. And it's just not what you expect, but it's brilliant.
Okay.
I had a tear in my eye. Dan and Lewis had a tear in their eye.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I think we were all, you know, quite. It was, you know, I mean, it was pleasantly surprising. It was, you know, yeah.
Well, I'll say the reviews have been good. So I'll keep it. I'll sort of keep it in the radar section. I'll probably watch it at some point, but I won't be rushing to see it. The next movie I watched last night actually. I've done a commentary on Patreon. I've been watching Silent Night, Deadly Night, the classic 80s slasher, which, if you're a fan of So Bad They're Good slasher movie...
Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I mean, the title's so memorable, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess.
Like, a kid, you know, his parents are killed by a guy dressed as Santa, so from that moment on, he's traumatised by Christmas, and certain things trigger that. We follow him, and he ends up becoming a psychomaniac killer, because of course he does. And again, if you're into like the so bad they're good, cheesy slasher style movies, and there's just something about Christmas time and slasher movies that go hand in, because it's a nice little twist and it subverts things, and you can just have a bit of fun, a little blood in the snow. It always looks good.
You've ever seen Black Christmas?
Yeah, I have. I mean, that's obviously a bit more of a straight movie, but that is a classic as well. I do love Black Christmas, but this one, it's just a good cheesy guilty pleasure style movie. Terrible acting, really hammy lines of dialogue. You've got really bizarre use of music, because like at one point he works in like a toy store, like because he's at like a nunnery, and you've got the because when his parents dies, he's put into like a nun type school, and you've got the real villain of the movie, which is this Mother Superior character who's like just a monster, and then you've got a younger sister Margaret, who's a little bit more forward thinking, a little bit more subtle with her approach to him, but like they put him in like this toy store like as like gets him a job, and that's where things start to escalate. But there's this really cheesy scene where they start playing this song, and it's the way it's cut, because it's him working happily in the toy store, and I guess it's getting you ready.
I can imagine it actually. Imagine the scene,
and it's kind of around almost like it's a cheery sitcom type scene, and you don't really get any proper Christmas songs. They just do like these songs that they appear to have made up for the film. And again, a bit like we were talking,
Christmas
probably not, but it's a fun movie if you enjoy that sort. There's some good deaths in it. There's some decent kills, and it is literally so bad it's good. But like,
where did you see that?
I mean, it's on YouTube. I think it's on Amazon as well, and it might be on one or two other streaming services. But it's quite easy to find, and believe it or not, there's 5 of them. But
wow, really
crazy! If you are a patron, you can get a commentary to this now, and I'm planning on doing the sequels as well. I think I'll do number 2 in the coming week. But like
all 5 of them.
I'm going to try it. Some of them might be hard to find, but if I can find all of them, I'll do all of them. Go to patreon.com/board now. You can unlock that commentary for just $1 a month. So you can check out those and other movie commentaries. I also do X-Files commentaries. And I will recommend actually, and this is on YouTube as well, but in a similar realm, maybe a bit better in a way, but a movie called Christmas Evil. I recommend that. That's a fun, like, and that literally is a killer Santa Claus. Like, it's a Santa Claus who feels underappreciated at Christmas, so he literally goes around killing people.
Is he literally Santa Claus, or is he?
Well, no, but that's sort of his thing. He dresses up as Santa, but it's fun. Yeah, Silent Night.
I love these titles. Just great.
How
many puns can you? Silent Night, Deadly Night. It's not even a pun, is it? It's just silent.
But you're never gonna forget that title, and Christmas Evil's a pretty great title.
Christmas Evil's great film. An Actor's Revenge.
Okay.
Which is from the early 60s, and it's obviously a Japanese movie. Quite an odd movie. Japanese culture. It's very, 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 very different to British or Western culture.
Yeah.
Which made me really confused, because it's about a female impersonator, like an actor, but he's considered the best female impersonator there is. But he goes around spending his entire life as a female, and all these women are just falling in love with him left, right and centre. And there are some odd sort of bits that are very stylised, and so this is the thing about, I mean, it's a revenge story. His parents were ruined by some people, and he goes out looking for revenge, whilst being, it's just all these women are chasing after him which is a bit confusing. And he's also playing 2 parts. So he plays this actor, the main actor plays an actor who is a female impersonator.
Right. And
like a criminal who kind of joins forces with him. So it's the same actor playing both parts. I couldn't really understand why. Anyway, so here's the thing. I started watching it, and about 10 minutes in, I was thinking, oh, I can't bear this. I'm hating every second of it. And then about half an hour in, I was hooked.
Okay.
And that took me through to the end. So I think I would say, if you want to watch this, persevere a little bit, because it's an odd film. It's you know, but I think it's odd because we're Western. I don't think there's anything actually odd about the film as such. It's just, it's very, very Japanese.
Yeah.
And and its sensibilities and its kind of logic, maybe like Kurosawa movies and stuff, that actually, what the thing about Kurosawa obviously is, you know, you understand what's going on all the time. It's always quite clear.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're going, that's just odd. Is it? Do they really? That's how Japanese culture is, especially when it's, you know, like a samurai film and it's set 500 years ago or something.
Sure.
You know, you sort of think this. Not only are we looking at Japanese culture, we're looking at Japanese culture from 500 years ago.
Sure.
You know, or at least an assimilation of it. But this is. I'm not sure when this was set. I think it was probably kind of set in like Victorian, maybe early 20th century. I'm not sure. It certainly seemed to be period, but it was never really clear when. But again, this is another kind of real stone cold classic, and this is all to do with me having injured my back and sort of and kind of thinking, you know, I can take the opportunity to watch a bunch of films whilst completely sober. You know, and I'm going to make the most of it. So, yeah, like I say, kind of some interesting. I got to watch some interesting films, and I do recommend this film. But the first 10-15 minutes, a bit of a slog.
Okay.
Maybe the first half hour, actually, a bit of a slog. Just because I think you're getting used to what the film's doing.
Sure.
It's like you've got, you know. So I mean, perhaps if I watched it a second time, I'd probably enjoy that first bit more, because I think I'd be expecting it, you know. But it was just such an odd. It was an odd. It just took me a long time to kind of get used to what was going on.
Okay.
And the story's fairly irrelevant, really. I mean, I don't know. To be honest, it was more just a kind of. It was very stylized. You know, there was lots of bits where they would be obviously on a set, like spotlit. And then the lighting would all change, and you know, it was completely unjustified in terms of reality. It would just, you know, it just would change, and you know, it's a very un-Hollywood type, very un-Western sort of way of making a movie, I guess.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, I enjoyed it. And by the end, I was pretty hooked.
The Christmas movies now, like my last two films are both like recent releases. For May, December, so the new Todd Haynes film.
Oh yeah.
One, and I was talking about this with Rachel because she knows quite a bit about this story, because it is
a true story.
It is actually a true story, which I didn't realise going in. I saw it was based on a book at the end, but I didn't realise it was based on a true story.
Can you roughly tell us the story without giving it away, or?
Yeah, I can do. I mean, what the film is about is the Julianne Moore character is having her life portrayed in a movie, and the Natalie Portman character is the actress who's going to play her. So she goes to live with her character, that being the Julianne Moore character, to get background on her life and do research in her life. She's talking to people close to her in her life. And that's kind of the setup, so it almost feels a bit like satirical, a little bit like it's trying to be, like it's sort of looking at that area to do with like kind of like trying to recreate someone's like life, and kind of going into like the art and just kind of like also the media and online stuff, and almost like true crime type things. But the sort of turn to it, which I didn't know, Julianne Moore character is in a relationship with a much younger guy, like, and I think they have kids together, but they're certainly married.
Yes, I suddenly know what this is about.
Yeah,
yes.
And so it turns out, because she met him very young, and it turns out she groomed him, is basically what happened. So when this came up in the film, because I didn't know much about, and I didn't know it was based on truth, there's just a scene where the Natalie Portman character is like researching kind of, you know, child sort of thing online, inappropriate, child porn, that kind. I thought, okay, this is taking a turn. Where's this going? And it does come out. I mean, it's sort of weird because Rachel told me, and I mean, this isn't really giving away spoilers, but she told me that in real life she was later arrested, the Julianne Moore character, because of this. And like, you don't actually see that in the film, like, but they do have like a confrontation in the movie, like her and her husband, and it comes out that it's certainly implied that she groomed him at a very young age. And
he was he like about 12 or something? And he.
Well, yeah, I mean, because.
And he fathered a child, didn't he?
Yeah. Lyrical look at this kind of, like, the Natalie Portman character trying to recreate the Julianne Moore character, how obsessed she is in. And I mean, she definitely comes across as more sympathetic out of the two, because the Julianne Moore character is very, like, prickly and constantly on edge. And I mean, it's the sort of role Julianne Moore plays very well, because she's very good at playing these very, like, quite shallow, uptight characters, but that put on a facade, and it's a very pretty, like, facade, and every now and again you see it crack type thing, and she's very good at playing passive aggressive. And I think it's one of the best scenes in the film where, like, they're in, like, a clothes store, and, like, the daughter of, like, her husband is, like, getting ready for, like, a prom, so she's, like, trying on dresses. And it's just this scene where she keeps coming back and forth and showing them the different dresses. And there's just this scene where she goes off into the changing room, and the Julianne Moore character has found out that the Natalie Portman character has gone to someone in her life behind her back and asked for stuff. And again, this is her being very sensitive about the stuff that might come out. So she just has this very passive-aggressive way of, like, warning her not to overstay her welcome or not to go too far. Because I can't remember the line, but it's almost this line about, as far as I'm concerned, I would open up the phone book to you. But then there's like a lace sort of fret in there at the end. And it's just when the daughter has gone off to the changing room again. And I think it's that sort of character and that sort of moment where Julianne Moore's very good at playing it. But I didn't like the film at all overall. Right. It was a very boring movie. I think a lot of it was, and it was just a very cliched, this is a very shallow character. These are all very kind of prickly, shallow, middle class, artsy type characters. And I don't think it really added much to that. Like, I'm not sure if it was trying to be a satire or if it was trying to play it more straight, but if it was trying to be a satire, I don't think it really did anything that hasn't been done before. I mean, obviously Todd Haynes has a certain style which we see in all his movies, which, whether you like his movies or not, they are quite distinct, but yeah, this one just felt like it was just doing another Todd Haynes movie, but it was just a bit going through the motions, and it was a bit, it never quite went far enough, because, like I said, when the Julianne Moore character, because I didn't know the true life story, so when it was slowly dawning on me, oh my god, she, like, groomed him at a young age, right. That stuff, I sort of wanted them to go a bit deeper into that, because I thought it would make it a more interesting movie. And they never quite went far enough with that. So that was one of the disappointments. And I think overall, like, the performances are obviously good, generally good. I mean, I like Natalie Portman a lot. But, yeah, it was pretty dull to sit through, and I just felt a disconnect with the characters where I either wanted to hate them but in a really engaging way, a bit like you do in a really good satire, but where they are you can't look away. They're very interesting.
Sort of Wolf of Wall Street type of.
Yeah, or like Secession on TV if you want to,
Didn't
or
watch that.
oh, amazing show, classic.
Okay.
But yeah, great show. But that kind of, I mean, recently another, like you had on Netflix, the Fall of the House of Usher, and that's a bit like that, where you have these despicable characters, but you just love watching the car crash, which is their life, and then slowly being picked off, and obviously it has horror mixed with satire, and it does it really well. Far enough with the satire, it did seem like a lot of predictable beats that we've seen.
Okay.
And I wanted it to be a bit more surprising, because as I said, when it took that twist, I thought, okay, this is a little bit surprising, and I wasn't quite sure where it was going, because again, I didn't know the story, but they never went far enough. Like, it never really engaged me as a movie. Like, I felt a disconnect with the characters.
Yeah.
It was a bit weak as a satire. It didn't really do anything that much which you haven't seen before. And, yeah,
Okay.
a bit bland, really. Hey, December.
Right.
Yeah, I can't recommend it.
No. Okay.
Not a fan, but I mean, Rachel's going to check it out and let me. I think it might be going on Netflix soon.
Yeah, I was going to say, if it's on Netflix, I might watch it then.
Yeah, so if you're undecided, maybe wait for that.
Max, the Spike Lee movie,
Okay.
which I've never
Very
seen
good.
before. And, you know, it was perfectly enjoyable. Enjoyable's perhaps the wrong word. But, you know, it was engaging. It was.
Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting thing, because I don't know very much about Malcolm X. I don't know if you know much about Malcolm X.
Not really.
I
No.
knew he was assassinated.
Yeah.
I kind of knew he was a Muslim. So I suppose, you know, watching the film, you kind of, he was a very serious Muslim. I mean, you know, I don't know if I was expecting. I don't know.
Okay.
But it's that sort of. I suppose it's that sort of thing that you probably shouldn't do, which is try and get a history lesson from a Hollywood movie. And I think that's what I was trying to do, was get a history lesson.
Okay.
From it. So in a way, I kind of left going, I still don't really know anything about Malcolm X. You know,
Right.
still don't really know anything I didn't already know, as such. There's a few things. I mean, I suppose I didn't know he was such a devout Muslim. You know, that he used sort of.
Yeah, I think
know,
I've
kind of-
heard something like that before.
I think I'd sort of assumed it was that, but that's not the way it was portrayed in the film. It was
Okay.
very, very devout.
Right.
You know, that this was really what his entire life was about. But there was a whole load of the politics too popular, it seemed, so they didn't like it. But
So they thought it was watering down the message.
well, yeah, I don't know what they thought really. I mean, I think in the end it seemed to be that, you know, he made some, you know, when after Kennedy was assassinated, he wasn't contrite about it. Well, not that he was responsible, but he wasn't contrite is the wrong word. He wasn't very sympathetic. He was a bit like, you know, you know, white men have been killing black people for years, and now one of their own has kind of now they've killed one of their own, and they expect us to care, but you know, or something like that. You know, it's just, I think it says something like, you know, the chickens have come home to roost or something. His life was in danger, and it was a bit like, well, how did we get here? And I'm not sure I really understood it. So I don't know. I mean, Spike Lee's always interesting, I think, you know, and
he seems like the right person to tackle that sort of subject.
But I think it is. I mean, maybe the real value of a film like this is that I may go off and read an autobiography, or you know, go off and read a sort of something about Malcolm X and actually find out what Malcolm X was about, having seen the film. Much less stylized than his usual. You know, I don't think that was a good. I don't think that was a good thing.
It was less stylized.
It was less stylized. It was much more straightforward. There was.
Okay.
And I kind of like the way he did things, like, you know, Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
And you know, that kind of, you know, the way he broke the fourth wall and they're all just talking to the camera, and you've got the kind of Samuel L. Jackson character kind of narrating the film, you know.
Yeah.
I know exactly narrating it, but you know what I mean. He's kind of like a voice of God type of narrator type thing, who's
Yeah.
you know, and that was more interesting. And then he would, you know, and this didn't really do that at all.
Okay.
But it was perfectly enjoyable. But I mean, I think this is one of those. Yeah, it was alright. You know.
Yeah. Okay.
You know.
Was Denzel Washington good? Because he plays.
In my last film, Channel Surfing. This is the one film I watched on Netflix.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is available for streaming, and
Yeah.
and I literally just kind of went, I don't know, I have no idea, just what. And I settled on, and I can't even really remember why. The premise looked vaguely interesting.
Yeah.
A film called Focus, which is Will Smith, Margot Robbie from 2015.
Oh yeah.
Do you know this?
I've not seen it, but I know it.
It's about
a very mainstream film.
It's a very mainstream film.
Yeah.
Con men. Pardon me. About a con man and a kind of Margot Robbie's a kind of an apprentice. It's kind of a romantic comedy, expecting to not be challenged in any way whatsoever, and it didn't disappoint in that respect.
Okay.
Which is not a good thing, but what I will say in its favour was actually it wasn't as predictable as I expected it to be by any means.
Yeah.
I really thought, he's going to do this is going to happen, and it didn't do any of that. It actually went in a few directions that I wasn't quite expecting, and it was actually enjoyable. I think there's this sort of thing of you've got to kind of try as much as possible to take films on their own sort of terms. So you can't, at the risk of sounding slightly snobby, you can't kind of look at and Femme and Focus and kind of go, well, clearly one's a great work of art. Bog standard Hollywood, presumably straight to, I don't know if it went to the cinemas.
No, it did go into cinemas.
It did go into, I don't remember it.
I remember the posters, it was quite,
But it was enjoyable enough.
Yeah.
It actually caught me out a few times, which, it's not like I'm above being caught out, but you know what I mean? It's quite nice when it happens, because all too often, especially with Hollywood films, all too often you actually see them and you're kind of going, I saw that coming. Yeah. I saw that coming like 3 hours ago, or 3/4 of an hour ago at least. And with this, there was a significant bit where I was like, oh no, actually I was a little bit surprised by that, and that's a good thing, And it was unchallenging, which is what I completely wanted, because I'd had a few drinks. My back was still hurting, but it wasn't as bad, and I was tired. It was one of them.
Okay. So fits as neat.
But the thing, it was interesting because Will Smith. This is pre-slapping Chris Rock, and this is pre-Barbie for Will Smith and Margot Robbie.
Yeah. I think this is quite an early film for Margot Robbie.
Yeah, so he was the big star, but of course it's not really. It's a bit like when you watch John Gilbert and Greta Garbo, and you think, well, John Gilbert was the big star, but who remembers him anymore? But everybody remembers Greta Garbo, And I think there's an element of that with this film. You kind of watch it, and Margot Robbie. A is much better in it anyway. She's good.
She's great.
Does Rock do his career a lot of harm? I imagine it did.
I think his film choices had already done that.
No,
Will Smith is one of those depressing declines in a career, because obviously when he was hot, he was really hot, and very charismatic, very likeable, and I think that's the trouble with some of his film choices, is he just plays characters who take themselves too seriously, and
this would fit into that, I think.
Yeah, but this is the sort of thing, a bit like you, I probably dismissed, and it's probably why I didn't watch it. And I'm a bit more infused because Margot Robbie's in it, and I do like her a lot. And obviously when Will Smith is on good form and is well cast, he can be good as well.
This idea of con men is something that I'm obviously kind of interested in. But it's like by the numbers, and yet it isn't 100% by the numbers, because it did manage to be. I suppose because to some extent it was so. But I was actually, I don't know. Yeah, I think perhaps there was a part of me that was kind of going, clearly this and then it didn't happen. It's like, okay, it's deviated from at this point a little bit, and but it was all right, and
but also quite well done for what it was.
it was perfectly okay.
Perfectly
really
okay
done,
for what it was.
Yeah, and there was a bit of chemistry between Will Smith and Margot Robbie.
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
I think.
Because see, I'm someone, and I mean, I'm not seen the film, so I can't say if it falls into that. But I mean, I am someone who, as long as it's not too in your face and it's not too, oh come on, this is just lazy. I can sort of enjoy a fun sort of pastiche where it is like nodding to other movies, and it's sort of doing a checklist, but it's doing it in quite an affectionate sort of way.
Yeah,
where it is quite stylish as well.
I wasn't really seeing the nods to other movies.
No, I'm not saying in this case, but sometimes that can be a mainstream sort of film I can enjoy.
No, I mean, I can definitely enjoy a mainstream movie. Whereas when it comes to like Pasolini or something, I'm kind of like, I want to be sober for this. And maybe that's its undoing, because actually I was bored stupid with that one. But I was kind of thinking, I don't want to sit here drunk and not understand this. And that's not a good thing, really. I think that's not a good trait, but but unfortunately that's just reality. So.
But I think you have touched on something there. I think there is, certain movies which you can enjoy with a drink and with a pizza on a Friday night, maybe with mates sort of thing. I mean, obviously, earlier on, My Silent Night, Deadly Night falls into that sort of realm. So there's definitely different sort of, settings or moods that you take into different movies, and that's fine. That's
and this
a
was
good thing.
I mean, this was very much a sort of, I've had a few beers and I'm just want to do something. I kind of recommend it actually.
Okay, cool.
I mean, it's an enjoyable night in movie.
Yeah, because I hear people who say good things about it, and I mean, I think some of that is certain people, Will Smith's kind of hot, so I'll watch him in anything, and maybe just, I mean, without sounding snobbish, do prefer mainstream films as a rule, and they do like films that are, sort of switch your brain off and that kind of thing, but no, okay, well, you've given it a pretty solid review, and I think a few others have said it's not bad, so okay, I might. I mean, I've got Netflix, so I might as well throw it on one night.
Yeah.
See what I think. It's the end of our film section, so we sort of went all over the houses with that, which was good. There should be plenty for you guys to maybe check out, recommend, and what we've been watching recently with TV. I did this month, which was a catch-up because it came out earlier in the year. But it's on Amazon, it's just a limited series. It's a new version of Dead Ringers, as in the David Cronenberg Dead Ringers.
Really?
Yeah.
The TV series?
Yeah. And it stars Rachel Weisz, so it's a gender swap one.
Okay.
So she plays the twins, Jeremy Irons in the original film. And you can see, because obviously a lot of times when they do gender swap, like, remakes, sequels, people get cynical. But this one, because of the theme of it, with them being surgeons, the gender swap makes perfect sense. Fantastic casting. I mean, it's dream casting having Rachel Weisz in there, because she just commits to the characters and the premise. And Twice, absolutely. So she's great twice. How can you complain? So she's great because obviously both twins are like completely different, and the story follows them where one of the twins, because one's called Elliot, but that's the one who's the more kind of nasty, like cynical but confident one. I forget the name of the other one, but the other twin, the one who's more timid and shy, she's the one who wants to open up like a clinic of their own, so they can like specialised in helping women with, you know, like pregnancies and that kind of thing. So that's like an ambition of them. And the Elliot, like the more, as I said, not a sort of more confident twin, the way the story goes is, and she wants to help her younger sister, or sorry, her identical sister, including with relationships. So she tries to work out, because she's interested in like this actress, but she also wants to make this thing happen. But then that leads to the obsession side of the story, where she's like so obsessed with controlling every little thing in her sister's life, then it just becomes overbearing and becomes very dangerous. But part of the story is then they eventually start this clinic of their own, and you get a selection of characters. One of them's played by Jennifer L. She's in it. She plays one of like the rich people that they go to who like...
Don't know who she is.
The one out of like Pride and Prejudice, as in the mini-series.
Oh, yes.
You see her in lots of things.
Yeah,
but
I've seen her on stage, actually.
Really?
She's the third.
She's great. Yeah, she's very brittle and good in this. But so they open the clinic, but then all sorts of, and this is where you get the link to like the Cronenberg body horror stuff, because all sorts of unconventional methods are going on, and it follows like the different people who are on the receiving end of this, and it's very good. I mean, it's very true to the spirit of the Cronenberg film, where it does have this, even though it's in some ways is a little bit more of a drama than some Cronenberg films and satirical, but it does play with like body horror and that sort of like subgenre. It's very entertaining. I mean, there's scenes which are things happening that are quite nasty, but somehow it makes them very entertaining. I mean, obviously Rachel Weisz is great in the role, and because it's only 6 episodes, so it's not a very long series.
Is it called Dead Ringers?
Dead Ringers, and it's on Amazon, and but because they do have a bit of extra time to work with, they do go in like other directions and different things, but
my memory of the David
very
Cronenberg
good
film is
I liked
that it's quite surreal, and it's actually quite hard to understand what's going on. It's you know, not in a bad way, but you can't 100%.
I think he tones it down a little bit than he obviously tends to do.
Yeah, it was a bit more. It was a bit less.
Yeah. And I think also it's very clever, because in this, like in that movie, there is something very subtle in the performance that lets you know which twin it is in either time, at any time. Right. And I know Jeremy Irons said in an interview he had a certain technique which did that, where you could tell, without being too over the top, which one it was at any time.
Right.
And I again, because there's a little bit extra time with this, they do twist over in the middle of a surgery, because like one twin isn't coping very well with the surgery, so they actually do a swap, and it's like literally, because one of them normally wears like the hair down and the other has her hair up, so she just changes the hair so that she's wearing it the same as, but they literally do a swap, because
I think that something like that happens in the movie, doesn't it?
It probably does. It's been a while since I've seen the movie.
I saw it in the 90s when it came out.
But this is good. I mean, this is a very twisty, turny, edge of your seat type thing, and yeah, the finale was very good.
Right.
Because there was a couple of bits along the way where I thought, this is losing me a little bit, but I think it definitely pulled me back in with the finale. The finale's very strong. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good stuff. Dead Ringers, I'd recommend it.
Okay, so I saw a documentary on, I think it was on Amazon, it might have been on Netflix.
Okay.
I can't remember. I didn't know.
One of the two.
I didn't know to note it down actually. But it was called Puppet Master, or maybe The Puppet Master. I can't remember.
Okay.
And it was a bizarre story about a guy who was a con man. So it's obviously something I'm quite interested in. I wasn't really aware of it, but it was just one of these things that caught my eye, and I thought, well, that sounds interesting. He was a kind of con man, but he persuaded a student. This is back in the 80s. That he was working for MI6.
Okay.
And they were investigating the IRA. And this student was a agricultural student, like farming type student, studying farming. You know what I mean? And somebody in his college had been linked to the IRA.
Okay.
So this guy convinced him that he was an MI6 agent, and they were investigating this college, and he said, have you got any ideas about someone? And this guy happened to name his own flatmate, and he was living with this one guy, I think, and these two girls, one of whom was his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy obviously got the name off him and went, yes, we're investigating him, you've got it right, you should be an agent. And then almost immediately went, your life is in danger, you have to go on the run. So
Okay.
and he said, and you've got to take the two girls with you. So he got the three of them in a car, and they went off on the run, and then he said, I'm giving you protection, you've got to pay for it. So they started sort of giving him their life savings. And they all just were living this life where they thought they were on the run from the IRA.
Right.
And they weren't. But meanwhile, so this is in the 80s, meanwhile there's currently this same guy has married someone, and there's interviews with with her children.
Yeah.
I say married, I wish they were married, but they've gone off, he's got together with this other woman. They've gone off together. She knows he's a con man, because he had all these women, but this is the, and she's choosing to stay with him. She's abandoned her family, doesn't see her children, is basically giving him all her money. And this guy got out, so anyway, so it kept cutting between this current day story and these three students. And it ended up being one girl. The guy who he had originally recruited, went just back home and whatever. But the girl, she was basically his prisoner for about 10 years. Right. And the other girl, which is actually, the documentary skims over this, but apparently he actually had children with her.
Right.
But meanwhile, he was taking all their money. But he was also doing it all over the world with all sorts of people. So lots of people. But this one girl who he had like prisoner for 10 years, she ended up working as a cleaner for one of his mistresses, who was also giving him money. And the girl doing the cleaning was giving him money. And it was just really strange story. And what was really interesting was just how easily these people have been duped on so little flimsy kind of thing. And like 10 years of this girl's life, it was really tragic. And then of course this woman now who's with him, that her children want her back and they want to see her, and she has abandoned them because of this guy. And now he's apparently working as a dog breeder.
Right.
And like,
that's bizarre.
but and there's videos of him online.
Right.
Exhibiting dogs at like crops and things. I don't know whether
Jesus.
it's crops, but the thing is, he was caught and he was sentenced. I think he was sentenced to life imprisonment. He was certainly sentenced to a prison sentence. But he got off on a technicality. It was for kidnapping.
Right.
Because technically he hadn't kidnapped anyone. They'd all willingly gone with him. Nobody was being held against their will. They were being held by lies and stuff. But it was this kind of weird sort of psychological grooming, I suppose. I mean, there didn't seem to be a kind of overt the sexual element to it. It was more about money.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a very, very weird, bizarre and true. I mean, I assume, it's a documentary. I assume it's a true story.
Yeah.
Tragic, just really tragic and horrible, and and I mean, this guy obviously a bit of a sociopath. Just have no conscience, no sort of, just ruining lives left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you go. That was Puppet Master. 3 episodes, but they're only like 40 minutes each. I think it was very.
Yeah.
It wasn't very long. I remember I watched it in one sitting. It was like the whole 3 episodes in one go.
Still on Amazon. I think this is a limited series as well. Although I guess there could be another season, but it definitely felt like a limited series. 7 episodes, so short once again, and it's called Swarm. So. This is
like
it's a good title, and I don't think so.
That movie with Michael Caine.
It follows this character called Dre. Her real name is Andrea. We find that out later, but she goes by Dre. She's played by Dominic Fishback, who's very good in it, and it's sort of this story. Like, it starts with her and her sister, who again are completely different. Like, her sister's like a makeup artist who's like a bit more confident and outgoing, and she has a boyfriend who's a bit slimy, whereas Dre is the more inexperienced, less confident one. But each episode is like linked by this singer, this famous singer who Dre is a massive fan of, and it's her obsession for this singer which goes to like uncomfortable, dangerous places throughout the 7 episodes. So each episode has some sort of a link to this singer. So in the first episode, she wants to go to a concert with her sister, but because her sister's so caught up with this other guy, she doesn't want to go to like the concert. And I don't know how much I can spoil, but there's a tragic event in the first episode that then spirals into the rest of the episodes. But I think what's partly good about it is it's got a little bit of an anthology feel, just because each episode is the character of Dre in a different location doing something different. Because there's a very entertaining episode where she goes and she's taken in this sort of retreat, and they're all kind of like Mother Earth style characters. There's a bizarre cameo by the singer Billie Eilish. She plays one of the like the leader of this retreat, and there's another episode near the end which is done as a true crime style thing, and they sort of use that as a way to explore more of Dre's background and upbringing and her being in foster care and stuff like that. But I mean, each episode she's in a different location and interacting with different characters, but it always turns dark by the end of the episode. Something happens,
right.
And that's what it's about really, is the character, her obsession with this pop star is very unhealthy, and it manifests in really disturbing ways.
So it's not about the music industry, it's about fan obsession.
Yeah, and it definitely gets the online culture, and how the mania around celebrities becomes even more heightened and unhealthy online. It definitely gets that culture very well. I mean, it's produced by Donald Glover, and it stars mostly, black actors, and I think it's definitely getting inside the African American experience as well. Like, I mean, with like those like hippie style characters I mentioned, it sort of gets into some of like the liberal racism.
My daughter.
That's him. That's his like rap
my daughter
persona.
likes him. She has played me some of his music.
Yeah, He was also, film-wise, he also played Lando in the Solo movie. That's him.
Okay, I have seen that.
Yeah.
Don't really remember him.
He was a very good Lando, but but you can tell he's and he is one of these. He's very interested in portraying kind of the black experience, black culture, and I mean a lot. This is very music driven. Like it has a certain style with the way it uses music,
right.
But it's a fun watch because it just bounces about different genres. Like it's got a little bit of a dark thriller vibe. It's got a bit of a horror vibe. It's very satirical, obviously, and I think it's just got this feel to it where you need to give it the first couple of episodes to get into what it's doing, because I think it only gets better like once you follow this character more and you just get into the style of the show, because it does have a very offbeat, distinct sort of feel.
So it's always following one character, the same one character.
Yeah.
But in a different...
Yeah, different setting. She interacts with different characters, but there's always the link with her obsession over this one singer.
Right.
And also, there's obviously, along the way, there's a link because, you know, events in her life which come back.
Yeah.
So, it's very well done. The actress is very good because she's very convincing at the beginning as the more timid, nervous one. And in a way it sort of fools you into that. It becomes a very different show if you don't know much about where it's going. Because where she ends up is in a very different place. And she does play a very sinister, over-the-top character very well. Like, she manages to be very threatening as well. So it's impressive seeing those two sides. And
who's the actress?
The journey she goes on. The actress is Dominic Fishback. No, apparently she's in the last Transformers film, which I haven't seen yet, but that came out this year, and there was something else on TV that... Oh, she's in this show called The Deuce, which is from the guy who did The Wire, David Simon. And that's about the development of the porn industry in the 70s. Really good show, really good show. James Franco's in it as twins, Maggie Gyllenhaal's in it, really good show. But she's in that, and I can sort of picture her in that. But no, based on this, she's one to watch, she's fantastic, and it's just one of these things, like, there are moments that you would think would be dark and uncomfortable, and yet they do sort of make you laugh. It is a peculiar mix like that. But, yeah, good. I liked it a lot, especially once I got into the flow of what it was doing. And, yeah, that's Amazon as well. 7 episodes. Yeah, 7 episodes. So, yeah, Swarm.
Okay. Shall I do my last one?
Yeah.
Which is... which it was on BBC iPlayer.
Okay.
So it may not be there by the time this goes out, but it was Crock of Gold, and it's called, I think it was called something, A Few Rounds with Shane MacGowan.
Okay.
And it's basically a documentary about Shane MacGowan, which was made not very long ago, but before he died, by Julian Temple. It's Julian Temple who made things like The Great Rock and Roll Swindle and Feel Good and Beginners, wasn't it? And and Earth Girls Are Easy.
Yeah.
So he's made a few movies as well, but this was a documentary about Shane MacGowan, which I hadn't twigged quite what a state Shane MacGowan was in before he died, really, until I saw this. It was. It's one of these kind of things where you watch a documentary and kind of go, I wish there was a bit more information going on, really. Yeah. You know, it was just sort of... It was like, let's just talk to Shane MacGowan, who's pissed. Yeah. And barely able to speak. I mean, I don't know if he'd had a stroke or anything, but that's kind of what I mean. It's like the documentary didn't really give you any information. It was a lot about his childhood, a lot about what formed him, and a certain amount about what it was like to be in the Pogues. But then it really kind of skimmed over, like, you know, I mean, clearly drank very, very heavily, and he was also a heroin addict, apparently. Angry at a lot of things.
Sure, yeah.
You know, a lot of it to do with his own career. But he's clearly a complex character, a very complex, kind of full of contradictions and sort of, you know, strange views on life and
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and I didn't really feel that the
That
film
came
really
across.
captured. I mean, it was hinted at with, you know, enough to make you kind of go, all right, oh, they're not going to tell me about it, and it was kind of a bit like that, really. But you know, shaming out. I mean, it was a bit of an uncomfortable watch because the guy was so ill.
Yeah.
So I mean, he was obviously not that long off dying. We didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't know that when they made the film.
Well, yeah, that's one of those.
I don't know
things
when it
just
was made, but I think it was
quite
like
recent.
2020 sort of time.
Yeah.
You know, that's, if you're a fan of the Pogues,
You might get something.
you
out
might.
of it.
I mean, apparently he was in another band. He got disillusioned with the Pogues because they sort of gave up on the Irish music thing,
Right.
and he formed another band called the Popes.
Okay.
I think it was Shane MacGowan and the Popes.
Yeah, I might have heard of
I'd
that.
never heard of them, but well, you had.
I think so.
But I don't know what they. I mean, that was skimmed over a little bit.
Yeah.
And there were some interesting things again. You know, where he was slagging off all this later Pogues music, and then they kind of had a tribute gig where he was clearly. I mean, it's clearly post. You know, he was in a wheelchair. He could barely
Yeah.
move, and he came out and he was singing like
Sure.
Summer in Siam. Strange, you know, and I thought, well, is there a kind of an explanation for that? Is there a kind of, or are we just taking it at face value? And it seemed to be a lot of it was very much at face value.
Yeah.
So I could have done with a bit more in depth, I suppose. But maybe there wasn't an opportunity. I don't know. Maybe that, you know.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Like, I was going to ask, do you think he indulged him too much rather than maybe asking the more pointed questions? I mean, obviously there's a way to do it, but I mean, maybe they just got there and that was the vibe. Maybe he wasn't in much of a mood.
I mean, he was clearly.
Yeah.
He was not going to. He clearly wasn't going to be massively cooperative. You did sort of see a little clip of him at the beginning losing his temper because they wouldn't.
Yeah.
They wouldn't turn. They wouldn't. They turned some music off because they were about to film an interview, and he was like, "Give me."
Typically, like a lot of people, I know the famous fairy tale of New York, but
Yeah.
I'll be honest and say I don't know much of their back catalogue, so...
Well, I mean, neither do I really. I mean, I'm not a huge.
Because I think that was 90s, wasn't it, that
Fairy Tale
song?
of New York.
94, maybe?
Was it as late as that? I would.
It could have been 80s, to be fair.
Oh,
with
it didn't
him
really,
as
and that was a little bit.
Because he's definitely an enigma as a character, or was, and like you said, like you're saying, there's definitely this idea that there is a lot of depth to a lot of things that he was saying. Or at least then he had his own unique way of phrasing things,
Yeah.
and that
But you know, it was a kind of.
maybe
It
a
was
bit
very.
misunderstood.
He was very. Sort of in touch with his kind of, you know, or wanted to be, but and yeah, he was British public school educated, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that seemed to have been something that he didn't like, and that actually his dad didn't like either. But his mum had sort of slightly pushed for.
That was more her. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't exactly ignore that, but they didn't try to cover that up in the film or anything. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of. I mean, there was also an awful lot of. You know, his speech was so slurred you couldn't really understand half of what was being said in the film. But this was when I watched sober, which was probably probably not the thing. I probably should have been a bit drunk.
But it's good then, at least we're sticking on a Christmas theme because he's so
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously he died near Christmas, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the weird thing watching him and Kirsty MacConnell thing, but they're both dead, and they both died kind of young. You know, they both died sort of before their time, really. another big hit this year.
Yeah.
This Christmas.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
I actually don't think I've heard Fairy Tale of New York this Christmas so far. I only got Whamageddon for the first time on Sunday.
It's a coincidence because my next pick actually features Julian Temple's daughter, Juno Temple. Thing I've been watching, which I'm only 2 episodes into, but is the latest season of Fargo. So Fargo season 5 they're on now.
Oh, really?
My thing with Fargo is I like the first 3 seasons, especially season 2. I think season
I've not seen them. I've seen the film.
Yeah, they're worth, if you enjoy the film, it's worth watching, but season 2 is my favourite season. That's really good. Because season 1 they stick quite close to the film, and it sort of feels in the same spirit and similar sort of story. But what it is, it's just an anthology show where it's a different story each season and different set. Normally in a different location and different time period.
Right.
But I would say the first 3 seasons are good. Varying degrees, but season 2 I really love. But season 4 I couldn't get through. It was like watching paint dry. I watched that was like Chris Rock, and it was like Chicago, and it was like a gang type one, but it's done in a very
Okay.
Fargo style way with all these coincidences and off kilter type characters, but it was very dull. I couldn't get through season 4. Maybe
Are Coen Brothers involved in it at all?
they're producers. They're not really anything
Okay.
beyond that, but it's definitely worth watching as a show, especially the first 3.
Right.
But so far, I'm 2 episodes into season 5, and again you've got quite a cast because all the seasons have quite big somber casts. So I mean, season 1 you had Billy Bob Thornton, Martin Freeman. Season 2 you had people like Ted Danson, you had Kirsten Dunst, bunch of people.
Right. Okay.
Season 3 you had Ewan McGregor playing identical twins, so you get a bunch
A lot
of
of twins going on in there.
yeah, exactly. And this season, like, Juno Temple is the lead, but you've also got John Hamm in it as sort of like the main villain sort.
So I know the name Juno Temple, and obviously I know Julian Temple, but who is... What would I know her from?
What you've seen, because did you ever watch that film which was by Greg Araki called Kaboom?
Give me a clue, what's it about?
Well, it's just very like Gen X, those sorts of characters, where it's a very slacker type movie and they're on drugs for a lot of it, but there is sort of a little bit more of a plot besides that.
I don't think I did see it, no, I don't remember it.
I'm trying to think what... Because she does appear in a lot of indie style movies like that. She's very good, she's very talented, and she's great in this, but so far, the housewife who's like bored with her sort of mundane type life.
Yeah.
And the first episode, which is mostly set up, there's a brilliant opening scene which is like really subversive, because the opening scene is her and her kid it's at some sort of a meeting, but you've got all these people like fighting around her, and because she's trying to get her kid to safety, and again this is where the Fargo style thing comes in, but she zaps a couple of cops out of self-defense because they get in their way, so she ends up in jail. But that sort of scene is, you think she's at like a rock concert or something, but it's actually she's at like the PTA meeting, and it's because she's suggested like having more edgy like books in the school like curriculum, so she set up all this big, it's become a big ordeal at the thing because some people are objecting, so that sort of spirals from that.
Okay.
But that's just an example of like a subversion in that first scene, pursued by a couple of hitmen who are again very Fargo style hitmen type thing. Funnily enough, there's a link to something you were talking, because one of the hitmen is the guy who plays the main... I mean, I don't want to call him a villain because it's not that sort of film, but like the main pimp lead.
Pimp.
Yeah, the one out of London to Brighton. It's him.
Oh.
He's in Fargo season 5.
Oh, right.
He plays one of these crooks,
Okay.
one of these henchmen. Also,
Is he like a Cockney?
well, he's doing the US accent.
Okay,
I think.
right.
Yeah, but yeah, I thought, okay, I know that guy, and then I remembered what from.
Okay,
And
yeah.
he plays Steve out of Stranger Things, is in it, but no, what happens is these henchmen come after her in her home, and at first you're not quite sure why. And again, it plays out in a very weird way where she's like, partly through accident, but also through her intuition, she fights back. And there's again a very pulpy type sequence where one of them he's got like a sack on his head, but his head like gets set on fire, sort of thing.
Right.
So the first episode, the way it plays out is it's set over this one night where these guys are pursuing her,
Yeah.
and she goes on the run, and she gets some help by local cops who pull these guys over, and it all escalates into like a stall late at night. Ends up back at home later, and this is at the point where her husband is really panicking, wondering, well, what's happened to her. And she just wanders in all casually and starts baking a cake, and
Right.
basically denies that anything really happened to her. She's sort of saying it was all a misunderstanding, because obviously he's seen the carnage from what went down earlier in the house, and she's just saying, well, I just cut myself, it wasn't really anything. And that's kind of what the thing is with her character, is that she does have this side to her which is hidden by her being this sort of more prisky, sort of down-to-earth like housewife. And in the first episode, there's only one scene with John Hamm in, and it's a scene she has it's like, it plays out like a dream at night, where he appears in like a western sort of setting, and that's his one scene in the first episode, and you think, well, is that a dream? What's that about? But it explains it in the second episode. It's because he's her husband or her ex-husband from a previous life, and he's the one who sent the guys to get her type thing, because she left him and started a new life. And so John Hamm in a way becomes like the villain of the season. But there's also this side where the Juno Temple character is a lot tougher and has this whole background and past which her family don't know about. And there's this other side because her husband's mother, another great bit of casting, she's played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, so lots of people in this. But she's like a really rich, snobby like business. So at the point where she's missing, she's worried about, what's going on? Do I have to pay this ransom money? And then when she returns, she's the one who's really cynical about, are you taking my son for a ride? That kind of thing. And she's putting all sorts of like...
Okay.
But it's a great role for Jennifer Jason Leigh, because she's very like icy sort of thing. And
So is it still Marge Gunnison or
no, I mean,
Gunderson? I think.
I think each season has that sort of character, because in this season so far, there is like this cop who's investigating what happened, and she talks very much like the Marge character.
Okay, so effectively it's a different lead character in each series, is it?
And it's a different story.
So in what sense is it Fargo?
Well,
This doesn't take place in Fargo either, it sounds like.
well, I think the first season does. As I said, the first season sticks closest.
Yeah.
I think it's just in spirit. Like, it definitely has the similar, where it's quirky, offbeat, and things play out in a way which feel like they could be a complete coincidence, but also, in this case, it could be this woman is actually more dangerous than she's letting on. She's actually tougher than she's... But so far, I'm enjoying this season much more than the last.
Are
season.
the other seasons on Amazon or Netflix, whichever it was?
They're all on Amazon now, actually. So I would say at least watch the first three. I'd recommend watching them and see how you go after that. I mean, because they're all a different story, it doesn't matter too much if you. But season one.
How many episodes? They're hundreds of episodes long, aren't they?
No, they're not. It's. I think it might vary. I think on average they're about 10 episodes each season.
Oh, okay.
So not too bad. But yeah, see how you go with it.
It feels like the trouble with these long series always feels like a bit of an investment. Whereas a film, it's kind of 2 hours.
Well, I know, but when it's anthology like this, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
But
I suppose the good thing about that is at least each story ends, I'm guessing. Rather than something where you always get a cliffhanger at the end of a series. Enjoyed the film, so is it like a case of if you like the film, you'll like the...
Well, I think so, at least in the early seasons.
The first...
I mean, season 2 is brilliant. I think...
Okay.
See, it's hard for me to describe, but I think once you start watching it, you'll see how it's done in a similar style. But obviously it has to do its own thing, otherwise there's no point in it being a thing of its own.
I suppose so. Take your point.
I think once you start watching it, you will see how it's sort of done in that kind of...
Do they claim it's a true story?
They do. Yeah, it's so
it's obviously
funny.
not.
No. And the Coen brothers said it's because you would never believe that they could make something like that up. So that's why they did that.
Right.
Yeah, that's the whole... And it's just playing with the audience. But yeah, because this current season, it's saying these events were in whatever city it is. I can't remember what state it is, this one. But more recent, like 2018 or something. But once again, they stick with that. Yeah, this is based on a true story.
Right, okay.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
Which is on at the moment. It's sort of weekly episodes. But you've sort of got the first 5 up, I think.
Me and my daughter, who is 12, watched the IT Crowd.
Oh yeah.
And so that's I'll finish on this. We watched the final episode, and it's funny. I don't know what to say really. I suppose it links back to Submarine, doesn't it?
Yeah, because Richard.
And I'm not quite sure I'm pronouncing his name right. I don't know what to say about it really. I mean, it's very much in the vein of. Actually, is it very much in the vein of Father Ted? I don't know.
Same creator.
Yeah, obviously.
And also
I think I preferred it to Father Ted. I think it's funnier than.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched that. So.
And Matt Berry.
Oh, he's so funny.
Came into it, and he kind of. I don't get the impression they wanted him to be such a big character, but he's ended up.
Took on a life.
Yeah, I mean, he ended up kind of. Being in the title credit sequences and things like that.
Yeah, because I much prefer him to the guy he replaced.
It was Chris Morris, wasn't it?
Who I think is a perfectly good actor, but I just much prefer the Matt Berry character. I think he's just more funny and...
Yeah, I mean, I've seen him in other things, and obviously he did a bunch of adverts, didn't he, for something, and he was pretty much playing the same character. And I kind of think, is that what he does?
Maybe. I mean, I've not seen... I mean, obviously the big thing he's in now is What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, right, okay. Is he playing the same character?
I guess. I mean, he's a vampire, so it's a bit different. But yeah, it's similar sort of delivery and tone. And
I did sort of wonder if that was in fact the case. It was quite... I mean, he was in it... basically there was 4 series and then there was a one-off kind of finale.
Yeah.
And it was starting to wear a bit thin. It was, but the humour, the actual humour of the show was still funny. Moss is just brilliant.
He's delightful.
Just very... it was just delightfully silly, really.
Yeah, no, it's one of my, from recent sitcoms, definitely one of my faves, and Yeah, I think it's just taking that everyday, relatable sort of characters, but kind of turning it up a little bit to something a bit more quirky and surreal and.
Well, they're relatable in a way, but then people like Moss, I have met them. People who are.
Yeah.
You kind of feel they've got a more meaningful relationship with their computer than they have with.
Yeah, he's a very
with human beings.
realistic sort of nerd type character.
Yeah.
And
I mean, he's exaggerated and pushed to the.
he is, but that's as
the
it
final
should
episode
be.
started to get a bit sort of, modernist, and they were kind of talking about how weird it was that they get into all these weird situations every week, sort of, and saying that's not normal, is it?
But
which is quite funny, and then they end up, with like a bomb. In the building, and and of course something goes wrong with the bomb disposal robot, and he has to fix it, and it was that kind of thing, and it was it was funny. I mean, it was consistent. If you see the first episode and find it funny, I think you'll be able to watch the entire sort of 4 and a bit series, and it's still funny. And I suppose that my one thing it was always teetering on the edge of being out and out surreal.
yeah.
And I kind of wish it had gone a bit further.
Okay.
There was many occasions when I kind of think, wouldn't it just have been funny if it had just become really absurd? Maybe not. Maybe
or they could have just maybe done that for. They could have had standalone episodes where they just went full blown.
Yeah.
That maybe
But
they
then-
didn't necessarily have to do it every
Yeah.
episode, but they could have done one-offs like that.
But maybe that's why it worked, because they didn't. Maybe they just had it teetering on the edge the whole time. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is brilliant.
No, it's very. I mean, I think it's very clever on kind of nerd culture, masculinity, because I really loved the football episode.
Well, I was thinking about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
when they're pretending to be football fans and they're just trotting out the bog standard, that ref had a nightmare, or what was Wenger thinking, that kind of thing, and it's just so funny them sending up that culture, and the countdown episode's very funny. I think that.
Street countdown.
Yeah, no, that was very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful
No,
show.
yeah, there you go.
I
So
enjoy it.
the
a
idea.
lot.
I don't really know what to say about it, really.
Yeah.
Quite funny.
Yeah. Easy sort of binge watch that one. My last show, and I only started this last night, so I've watched 2 episodes. It's one of those shows for years I've been wondering if I should take a look at it, and when it first came out, I didn't know if it would be my sort of thing.
It's not ER, is it?
It's not ER, but it's in that sort of realm. It's House with Hugh Laurie.
Okay, alright.
Yeah, which is funny, because at the time, I mean, this was his sort of switch into a different kind of character, because he was obviously known more for the Blackadder style characters and
Friar Laurie, I guess.
yeah, but he was also always known for a certain kind of character, which is the opposite to this grouch, this very cynical,
Okay, I've never seen House.
Well, that's sort of the premise. That
Right.
he's almost a terrible human being, but he's a brilliant doctor, and that's why he gets away with what he does. Because he has unconventional methods, and he's almost a very anti the system type doctor.
Okay.
He will push things and do things that are illegal, pretty much, if he can get away with them.
Right.
Just to kind of get a result type thing. So he's very result driven, no matter how unpleasant he is with some of the things he says, some of the things he does. So it is him playing against, at the time, what would be type. And at the start of the show, so he gets appointed as head doctor to this practice. And you get this character played by Lisa Eddiston, who I know from season 1 of The West Wing, but she's
Okay.
Good actress. And they have a nice back and forth, like sparring. But she's actually the head of the practice. So they have a love-hate relationship where she's pretty much at the start. I don't really want you here because I don't like your methods, but you're so talented and good and you get results. So for the time being, we have to work together. So it's that kind of relationship. And then he has his own staff, obviously.
Right.
And they're like up and coming doctors. And it's done as a procedural, like you have a different patient each episode and a different, so it's almost like a case type thing but with like that kind of thing.
Right.
And yeah, no, I mean, so far I'm enjoying it a lot, and I think it's partly because it's cleverly done like that, where because a lot of times on TV or film it is very hard to make like medicine and, you know, doctors and that engaging, but I think because they treat it almost as a procedural type thing where there's twists and turns and there's things that they have to figure out.
There is automatic, well, not necessarily automatically, but there is a kind of, you know, life and death kind of, you know, you are dealing with those kind of extremes, aren't you?
Well, there is,
Potentially,
but I
anyway.
guess there's only so many times you can do that. Because if you do it
Yes,
too
I suppose
often,
that's
it's
true.
overkill. But
Yeah.
But I do like how this has a procedural type feel, and you get sort of twists where they think it's a certain thing, but then it turns out to be. And as I said, he has unconventional methods.
Right.
He's very good. I think he's doing an okay US accent. I think you can tell it's a little bit than he is a Brit, but I think he does an okay US accent. And you've got a decent cast of characters because...
Who else is in it? You've got this woman that I don't know, but...
No. Have you heard of Omar Epps? He's been in a few things.
Yes, I have heard of him. Why-
I know you haven't seen... I know you've only seen Scream 1. He's in the second Scream. But
Okay.
yeah, he's popped up here and there. He's one of the main
Definitely know the
characters.
name.
And weirdly enough, I mean, this was really distracting last night, but it's got the one who played Billy Kennedy out of Neighbours, and that was so distracting.
Billy Kennedy.
Yeah, you know, like you have Carl and Susan, and they're
Oh
killed.
God, hang on. I haven't watched Neighbours for 30 years.
Okay.
You only ever watch Neighbours when you were a student, don't you?
Well, I guess, but I'm a bit younger than you, so this is like 90s Neighbours growing up watching it, and it's just something I watched when I grew up.
There was one guy, Jim something.
Jim Robinson.
He's always turning up in
He's-
Hollywood movies.
Oh, Jim Robinson. Yeah. No, he is Alan Dale. He disappeared for ages and then had a career revival on like American TV or movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. The guy never ages, but yeah, no, it was distracting because I thought that's Billy Kennedy out of Neighbours, and then I paused it and checked like the sort of profile, and it was, but
Perhaps I'd stopped watching Neighbours by that point.
some good guest stars, but yeah, no, it's really because in the first episode it reveals a bit about why he chose this particular team, and I think it gets a bit into his mindset and his world, because one of the characters, who's female and quite young,
Yeah.
at first he says he chose her because like she's good looking, and she's like, what are you saying here? And she's really offended, and then he puts it in a different way, and what he's actually saying, which isn't that less offensive, but like he puts it in a way that he's impressed, and because of her looks she could have coasted on that and she could have made
Right.
money quite easy as a model or something like that, and he's actually impressed that she had the commitment to pursue a career in like medicine, and that's why he chose her for the
Okay.
team. And I think that's what I'm liking about his character so far, is there's sort of a method to his madness, even though he's a bit of a jerk and
Yeah.
you know, terrible bedside manner and all that. There is a method to his madness, and he does have a unique kind of way of looking at the world. So
Okay.
it's only 2 episodes, so I'll see how it goes. But so far, I'm liking the format of it. I'm quite liking the characters. So
You've got me kind of wanting to watch Fargo.
Yeah.
I think a little bit. It's the commitment to that many episodes that I'm reticent about. But
Yeah, and I think sometimes this is just.
you didn't convince me about House yet, but
No, okay.
but yeah.
I mean, I'm only 2 episodes into it, so.
Yeah.
But based on what I've seen, I'm enjoying it. Because I think for a while I dismissed it. I was like, I don't really want a show where Hugh Laurie's a grumpy doctor. I mean, for some reason that just didn't appeal.
Well, no, it doesn't really.
But over the years, you hear things about it, and I think he's been very clever the way he has turned his career around. Like, he's realised that he could only play the Blackadder style characters for so long. You sort of have to.
He was in like Peter's Friends, wasn't he, and a few other movies?
Yeah, and obviously he's in.
Is he in 4 Weddings? If he's not, he probably should have been.
I don't think he's in that.
No, I don't think he is.
I mean, obviously one of his big recent ones is that John le Carré one.
Oh, I watched that.
Yeah.
I watched that recently, but not in December.
What's it called again?
The Night Manager.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it at the time because I had read the book, and the book's not very good.
Yeah.
I mean, John le Carré generally, but I had read The Night Manager and then heard this TV thing, and I was like, but then I heard so many good things about it, and I thought I will watch. On DVD, I watched it and really enjoyed it.
Good. Good. Yeah, I liked it a lot. Yeah. Yeah, easy watch.
I forgot he was in that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's brilliant in that. Yeah.
Kind of playing Hugh Laurie, but a nasty Hugh Laurie.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's good in that because he's very flamboyant as a playboy, but there's this nasty streak to him as well, which you can see. So
definitely.
No, I enjoyed that. So I think he's been quite savvy the way he's transitioned into slightly more dramatic style roles. I think he's been quite clever with that. But
there seems to have been a thing, doesn't there, with actors, like Hollywood actors, that a few, I mean, in my time, sort of thing, when I was 30, they didn't do TV. That was a kind of stepping stone to doing movies.
Yeah.
And I think they were slumming it a bit if they did TV, or they might do the odd guest slot on a big show like Friends or something. Bruce Willis coming in and doing a few episodes, but there was an element of like, I know I'm doing TV, but you know what? It's Friends, so it's sort of alright. Whereas I don't think that's the case anymore, is it? It's like TV's very respectable now, and almost more respectable than films, really.
Hey guys, me again. That's where the recording ran out, so I hope you enjoyed this episode, this special festive episode of what we've been watching recently. If you want to get more of Ray's stuff, he does do his own short films and various little bits, and you can find them at the link on the screen right now on YouTube, Ray Turner /video. I will also post them in the description below. He also runs a silent movie club in Lancaster. If you want to get more details on that, check them out on Facebook at Lancaster Silent and Classic Movies. Just look for that, and you'll also find my details on screen. Patreon.com/boardnow if you want to support me for just $1 a month. But thanks again to Ray for joining me for this episode, and look out for more similar things coming in the new year. Again, happy Christmas. See you again. Like and subscribe, share me out, and see you later, guys.